Hello, everybody. Good morning, good evening. What's up, Erica? Hey, Tyler, #1 fanboy, but yes, you were not first. What's up, Leftist Leo? Finally, guys, a day in which it's not literally on fire outside. That's pretty awesome. I'm actually not dying of heat stroke for once. I don't even have the aircon on. What's up, Jumpjay? Namaste to you. We've had a day, haven't we? Like, woke up and I'm looking at the news and it's just, well, RFK was confirmed. We know that at the very least. Thank you. I rarely get to wear an actual shirt on stream that has sleeves because it's always so hot in this room. You're literally freezing. That tends to be how it is lately. For some reason, like every time I talk to like friends and family in the US, they seem to have the exact opposite temperature and like weather conditions to me. Like it was 42 Celsius. It was like 107 degrees Fahrenheit here the other day. Meanwhile, in New Jersey, it's like bucketing snow. It's quite interesting. What's up, Joy? It's interesting. Okay, cool. We'll put that over there. All right, let me get off Twitter. All right. One thing I really want to show you guys. This is not quite important, but it is quite funny. Did you watch The Australian Nurses? I didn't, but we're gonna watch it today, Tyler. I have it on the list. It's up there. I know that feeling today. Let me get off Twitter. I mean, that's where I gather quite a lot of like the news from. So it's a place in which I spend a decent amount of time, more than I'd like to. All right. So the Pope has apparently come out against scrolling. Pope Francis warns that excessive scrolling can cause brain rot. We are radicalizing the Pope, it seems, every day, a bit more and more. Now he's talking about brain rot.
Pope Francis urges Catholic journalists and communication professionals gathered for the Jubilee of the World of Communications in Rome to be courageous and tell the truth while being messengers of hope. Guests such as Nobel Peace Prize laureate Maria Ressa and author Colum McCain spoke at the event on Saturday.
Yeah, like the American Christian movement has been very mad at the Pope lately. And yes, it is on the news quite a lot over here, Tyler.
Today, in which 9,000 journalists from around the world gathered for at the Vatican. The Pope's message for the 59th World Communications Day addressed concerns facing modern communications, reminding that more than 120 media professionals died in 2024 covering conflicts, according to the Pope.
Gaza killed, not Gaza killed, Israel killed more journalists in Gaza last year than in every other war combined. Oh, hold on 1 second. Sorry. There's someone at my door. Sorry, I forgot my landlord was supposed to come today and have a look at those like air conditioner stuff, so that's what that was. Yeah, Amazon package number.
Francis called against social
Only the
media
OG
scrolling,
brain
which
rot
he
is
says
allowed.
causes
The Pope really needs to watch me more.
rot. Pope Francis ended his message calling for hope-telling and stories that
What's up, Carpe
nurture
Pax?
life.
So yeah, that I thought was kind of funny. Is he a hottie? I mean, what do you think, Tyler? So, besides that, we've had a couple interesting stuff happen. So we seem to be getting a plane crash every day now that Donald Trump has defunded the FAA. It really does seem like what was keeping the planes in the air was DEI. But, I mean, this one was a military aircraft that crashed off the coast of San Diego yesterday.
The images coming in, the U.S. military jet crashing, plunging into the San Diego Bay, nearly crashing into a neighborhood. The pilots then rescued by boat. Here's our chief national affairs correspondent.
It nearly crashed into a neighborhood.
Tonight,
Could you
this
imagine?
is the moment a Navy jet falls out of the sky off the coast of California, narrowly missing a residential neighborhood, crashing into the San Diego Bay.
True Carpepex, could you imagine the damage that a military aircraft could do if it crashed into a residential area?
Again, as this video captures the jet
What's up,
barreling
PPG?
towards the water. Around 10:15 a.m., the Navy's sophisticated EA-18 Growler was close to landing at the naval base when the plane started to go down.
They advised that it did land in the water. There's Navy boats now searching the water.
Look, I'm sorry, it didn't land in the water. It crashed in the water. And Zach, like, it was a dive until it became a crash.
Commanders requesting a crash.
Yeah, a C-130. That would
Both
be insane.
pilots ejecting safely, the Coast Guard, the Navy, and Customs and Border Protection dispatching boats to look for the crew, but it was a local fishing vessel that rescued the pilots who were in the water for only about a minute.
Base fishing. That's like a block of apartments, yeah.
It was kind of quiet, and then it kicked up again, and all of a sudden,
We gotta bring the DEI back. The planes keep falling.
a few seconds later, just
It gets worse too, though.
straight down into the water.
The two pilots transported to a local hospital for medical treatment. They're in stable condition, and the cause of the crash is now under investigation. The pilots making a split-second decision to eject from that aircraft just a short distance from a densely populated neighborhood.
If this aircraft had continued on even a second more, it could have hit Shelter Island or flown into a populated neighborhood in Point Loma.
So, like, obviously, the planes have been a problem. We're getting a crash, like, every day now. But beyond that, it seems like DEI was also a part of, I don't know, shipping. We had the USS Harry S. Truman, a 100,000-ton nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, collide with a 53,000-ton merchant vessel near Egypt last night. Like, first, like, obviously the aircraft carrier is fine. This shit is hard to sink, especially with, like, colliding with a ship half its size. But, I mean, we've gone from just crashing airplanes to now military naval vessels colliding with each other. Like, it's insane. What's up, Shardspork? Besiktas? You're a Besiktas fan, Jump J? Trump turned off the Navy's radar? Yeah, it seems like it. Firing all the DEI is not working all that well. The other ship, low-key, dumb as hell, though. I mean, it doesn't matter, right? Like, there should be systems in place to not do this. And it is the faster ship's job to obviously try and avoid the collision, but both should. Name of the ship was Besiktas? Oh, it was a Turkish vessel, was it? I didn't know that. That white boy meh is permeating the government. True. True. Alright, I suppose we should talk about the nurses in Australia, eh? So, this has been all over the news here. We had a video come out of a nurse in Australia saying something about Israeli patients that, like, I also don't agree with. People are quite mad at this, and it's changing the subject from anti-Semitism is the Nazis doing rallies to back to what it was before. Anti-Semitism is just anyone who's anti-Israel. Now, this person in this context is not necessarily just anti-Israel, right? The thing that she's going to say here is wrong, but the entire context is being overblown and is being applied to the entirety of the left and of the anti-genocide protesters. En sevdiğiniz devrimci kimdir? Did you Google translate that, Zach? It's who's your favorite revolutionary? I'm not sure that I do. Australia gets occupied next. Honestly, we kind of already are. So this is what was
They're
said.
on the front line of the public health system in one of the most trusted professions. It's a trust that's been breached by two of their own, and nurses are devastated.
Jump J, you better not be a Trotskyist.
Members were saying overnight they have copped abuse from the public. They have felt the anger from the public. Please, public, this is not us. This is not who we are as a profession.
In the video, nurses Ahmed Rashad Nader and Sarah Abu Lebda discuss their treatment of Israeli patients.
I won't treat them, I'll kill them.
Their anti-Semitism.
It is a fucked up thing to say. And what I'll say about it is, like, if you are a medical professional, I don't care what your personal beliefs are. Now, like, obviously, Israel is committing a genocide. That does not mean that every Israeli is evil. But take all of that and put that to the side, because right now, at least for me, none of that matters here. What matters here is that you are a medical professional, and your job is to help everybody. You don't get to take your personal feelings and apply them to your patients. It's just like how a doctor in the United States should not legally be allowed to deny someone an abortion because they religiously or personally don't agree with it. I don't think that you should be able to deny, like, trans people healthcare because of your personal beliefs. You are a doctor or a nurse. You are in the medical field. This is your job. Do your job. Beyond that, what she said was stupid. Now, did she mean it? Almost certainly not. There's zero evidence of, like, anyone being harmed by the healthcare system here. But what this does, beyond giving ammunition to the pro-Israel end, is it also gives ammunition to the American messaging of the healthcare system is bad, anti-intellectualism, anti-science, anti-vaccine rhetoric. Like, all of these things get drawn in when you start having to question any part of the healthcare system. We have a concerted effort to devalue and invalidate scientific papers, scientific research, medicine, experts in their fields. What you are doing here by saying stupid shit like that might be joking around, but the outcome is an increased perception of anti-Semitism from the left, from anti-genocide protesters, from pro-Palestine protesters, which doesn't necessarily exist, not in a real form. Like, there is obviously people here and there, but they're not the ideology that is being represented there. And then you also take and do damage to your entire industry. Zach, if it was Netanyahu, maybe do a civil arrest while you're at it. Like, okay, sure, you still treat them though. But, like, that's one thing. That's like, if a literal war criminal is your patient, then your job is still to treat them to the best of your ability. Your job doesn't change. Afterward, then you can do, like, a civil arrest. You can call the cops. Like, that shit doesn't matter. But there's a way to go about that. A therapist cannot discriminate against a sex offender even if they want to strangle them. It's an oath. Exactly, leftist Leo. The Hippocratic Oath matters. But we don't even care about that anymore. You don't attach bigotry to a public service at all, period. Based, Qatar, Mustafa Kemal is based. Now, it's inappropriate and some unprofessional, but it's also helping the people that you don't want to be helping. If they just said it to another nurse, I don't feel comfortable treating this person, it wouldn't even be an issue. Yeah, literally, like, if you just said it to one of your coworkers and say, you know, can you take this patient? I don't feel comfortable. That's one other thing. You know, you can do that. But at the same time, do your fucking job. You don't get to discriminate just because you don't like somebody. PPG, I got horrible news, Visora. Yi and his wife, which is always naked for some reason, have broken up. I mean, good for her, getting away from the horrible abuse that Yi probably puts her through. It's basic high road stuff. Even if your patient wouldn't do the same for you, it doesn't really matter. Be a better person. We literally, like, do this all the time, right? We have murderers and rapists in prison, and sometimes we bring them to a hospital, and even though they are handcuffed to their hospital bed and there are police guards watching them, you are still expected to give them the highest quality treatment that you could possibly provide Now, obviously, like finances comes into it when we talk about America, but in Australia, we have like public health care. This is just wrong on every level.
For all to see, without
And like this is the result.
Any Semitism there for all to see, without any shame.
Today, the New South Wales Health Minister visited Bankstown Hospital to meet
I would
their
love
colleagues.
a hippocampus.
Nurses were visibly upset.
You read Percy Jackson as a kid, didn't you, Zach?
I spoke to one staff member who'd been there for around 20 years. She broke down. She said to me that she hasn't been able to stop thinking about it.
It's fair to say that the staff at this time are ashamed, apologetic and emotional
It is
about
Captain
what's
Buggy.
transpired.
Age of mythology, fair
The government
enough.
says so far no harm to patients has been uncovered. It's now in the
It's
hands
not
of the...
so far. There is no harm being done to patients. This is just like this woman just said some stupid shit, and now there's all of this speculation, there's all of this scrutiny being put on this. That's literally exactly what I'm talking about.
Healthcare Complaints Commission.
You have no idea how many Israeli Khara dog came to this hospital, and
The Israeli influencer who posted the video says when he
Jesus
heard the
Christ.
nurse's
I didn't
views,
hear that part.
he set out on a mission
Like,
to
shut the
expose
fuck
them.
up, man.
So I had to stay calm and get as much info as I can, so I can post it and show my people, and we can find them, you know.
Like, you know, honestly, I can't blame him for this here. I would do the exact same thing. And yes, Annabeth deserved a hot lesbian, in my opinion. Honestly, probably Artemis herself.
It took just hours to find them, and they're now at the centre of a police investigation.
How is Sarah doing?
She's very emotional,
All this
very
does now
distressed at the
is
moment.
increase
Police have
scrutiny
made
on the
contact with
healthcare
Max
system.
Zifa in Israel, who's agreed to provide them with a full statement and an unedited version of the video. Police say it's critical investigators can see that exchange from beginning to end. The nurse's colleagues have already heard enough.
I'm very sad that someone would so blatantly show their prejudice.
They say patients are safe, whoever they are or wherever
As they
they're
should
from.
be.
Nick Dole, ABC News, Sydney.
First today.
Like, that was ridiculous. I don't know. On other Australian news, we are absolutely a target of Russian propaganda. We do have an election coming up very, very soon, so that is unsurprising. But we had some spies track down some Russian hackers.
It was one of the biggest hacks in our history, impacting millions of Australians that saw some of their most sensitive personal information stolen and put on the dark web. Now tonight, stunning new details can be revealed about the men behind the Medibank private cyber attack and how Australia's spies tracked them down.
This is pretty cool.
We're entering one of the most secure rooms in Australia. Okay, here we go. Cameras haven't been allowed in here before. It's the top secret ops room where Australia's cyber spies hunt for criminals.
So they're scanning the internet.
I wonder if you like paused the video and had a look into all of these screens at high quality video, if you could see anything interesting.
They're looking for vulnerabilities.
And it's from this room that 5 dodgy Russians were caught red-handed, warehousing the most sensitive personal data of millions of Australians, pilfered from health insurer Medibank Private in one of Australia's biggest cyber heists. Georgina Fuller ran the Australian Signals Directorate investigation into the Medibank
This was not a
hack.
small, this was pretty
it's about
big.
unpicking the digital trail that they leave behind.
The Medibank data was stolen in August 2022 by Russian hacker Alexander Ermakov. ASD, discovering Ermakov, then transferred the data to computer servers in the Siberian
I'm
town
gonna
of
leave you guys with
Barnaul.
this for a second. Just we'll go into like an analysis of it afterward. I just want to go make sure that everything's fine up there.
Operated by an obscure company called Z Servers. It offered anonymity, payment in cryptocurrency, and claimed to be bulletproof against law enforcement.
Actually, give me 1 second. I got to turn the camera off. All right, come on in. All right, sorry.
They are bulletproof. ASD is their kryptonite.
ASD began poking into Z Servers' business. Its customers were all criminals.
Including money laundering,
phishing, malware campaigns, all sorts of things.
If you've received a spam email or shonky text message in recent years, there's a fair chance it's come from this Siberian company. 30-year-old Alexander Bolshakov
they do
is
this everywhere,
Zevser's
SN.
boss. He has 2 lieutenants, 2 others making up the team.
One of the big reasons I'm showing you this, not just because this is big news in Australia, but because you're not going to be seeing this stuff from American news. What's up, Cosmopolitics? Good to see you. And so like an analysis of what this looks like in other countries can also be applied to the United States.
Including Bolshakov's younger brother, Dmitry, a gun-loving weightlifter. 5 of them making about, $2 million a year.
Millions of dollars a year.
Not hiding their lavish lifestyle either.
They're buying, new toys, boats, all sorts of things.
They are cocky and they think that they can't be touched, and that leads to mistakes.
They like to
Based.
party.
I hope you have fun on your pod. What you doing?
ASD choosing to strike when the 5 Russians were on a vodka-soaked night out in Siberia. Zedserver's system...
Literally the best time to do it. Like, all of them are just drunk and suddenly they go home and all of their systems have been compromised.
Systems were infiltrated, its data wiped, the Russians locked out. All 5 now subject of international sanctions, their cover
Of course.
These actors market themselves on the basis of being both anonymous and bulletproof.
It's not the worst, Lord Fluffy Art.
For these 5 Russians, the time's up.
I reckon they know now, and I'm looking forward to their reaction.
Andrew
I am
Coburn,
too.
9 News.
So, moving on to the United States. Let's talk about how they're arguing about pronouns on CNN for the Gulf of Mexico. They're literally, this is actually wokeism. This argument that they're having here is genuinely mind-boggling to hear. They're mad about dead naming a body of water. This is like everything they make fun of trans folk for. They're literally doing here.
I'm with Scott here that if he changes the name to the Gulf of America, whether they like it or not, them not calling it that, they are based out of the US. I get that they're an international organization. It's simply they're not reporting on the truth. So now if you're the president, you can argue.
I wonder if someone changes their name and you keep using their old name. Are you telling the truth?
They're not
But
reporting
Emily,
the truth,
wouldn't
so
you
why are they
agree that
qualified
the
to be
truth
here?
is also that the rest of the world calls it the Gulf of
So
Mexico?
technically, every other country could change the name of it too in their own country. Then the journalists should comply with whatever their country
but
wants
Emily,
to call
wouldn't
it.
you agree that the truth is also that every other country in the world calls it the Gulf of Mexico?
That's fine, but Donald Trump put an executive order to
which
change
truth
it.
do you care about?
I care about the American truth.
Okay,
So
okay.
the
So let's
American
just
The American truth.
care about
So
the
US
version of
journalists,
truth that Donald Trump
I believe
says is
this
right.
feels like a really weird hill to die on and something to get quite hysterical over. It feels like it's actually ridiculous.
It is weird
that
hill to
this
die
is
on.
a
It is. It's actually ridiculous that they're getting hysterical over this. It's the Gulf of Mexico. Everyone in the world calls it the Gulf of Mexico, and they want us to call it the Gulf of America. This is very much formerly Twitter coded, you know? It's like, you need to call it X, you can't call it Twitter. CNN doing this coverage is just evidence of them being conveniently covering non-productive bait put out there optically. Yeah. It is. The thing is, like, you're not going to see real journalism from American media anytime soon. They've been entirely cucked because they're all afraid for not only the continuation of their job, but, I mean, legally, for their safety. They could just be arrested at this point.
Hang on a second, Brian.
I mean, not like, there is nothing to stop the crackdown on media.
I do want to talk about one very important one here.
But
I'm
this
with
is
Scott
just
here
quite
that
funny.
If he changes the name to the Gulf of America, whether they like it or not.
Honestly, at this point, SN, I would call it X because it's not Twitter anymore. Like, every part of it being Twitter died. It's like how the United States of America isn't really the United States of America anymore. We watched the funeral. It also died. Now, we talked a bit about this yesterday, but on March 15th, they have to vote for the debt ceiling. And I still think the Democrats should not vote in favor of raising the debt ceiling. I think the Democrats should not really even engage with the budget bill and make sure the government goes into a shutdown. I think this is the best case scenario for the world. Now, I think obviously quite a lot of Americans would be hurt by this, but I still stand by my feelings that like the American economy crashing right now is the best case scenario for literally the entire world. I don't really have much sympathy. But remember how the Republicans said that they wanted to cut the budget? Well, I did say that that was going to be impossible, but
literally the Republicans just released their plan to raise the debt limit while we were sitting here, and they want to raise it by $4 trillion.
So, yeah, instead of cutting the budget, they want to raise the debt ceiling by $4 trillion.
Okay, guys, like literally.
And you're right, Captain Buggy.
Without words. Inflation is going up. You want to raise the debt ceiling by $4 trillion. You want to gut Medicare. You want to gut Medicaid. You're talking about going after Social Security after promising that you wouldn't. I mean, really, what the heck is going on here? We're not trying to take down Elon Musk as a businessman.
You should be.
This dude is literally breaking the law inside of the federal government.
No, I do have sympathy for the people who voted against it, Lord Fluffy Art. I just don't have sympathy for the country as a whole. I'm sorry, but like, the amount of individual people who voted against this still far outweighs the people who did not vote alone, and also to the people who did vote for this. There needs to be consequences that are felt, and yes, like, that sucks for America. That does. I don't want you to suffer, but there needs to be suffering. There needs to be consequences. You need to be able to have a system in which when you touch the fire, it hurts, because then it makes you stop touching the fire.
And for a party that is supposed to be the party of law and order, in quotes, I really do not see you holding him accountable and doing your most basic constitutional responsibility in the separation of powers.
By the way, that, like, I very much enjoy that kind of rhetoric. And I know you are. And I, like, so are my family, so are a lot of my friends, Lord Fluffy Art. I'm sorry, but personally, like, your interpersonal relationships don't go above the needs of the entire world here. I obviously don't want these people to, I don't want good people to suffer, but there's no way for us to have that separation. That's the thing, right? There is no existing way. That can't happen. It has to be all or nothing, and right now, all is the better choice. Democrats should not prevent the Republicans from crashing the economy in the first 2 months of their new government. Yes, literally. We need to not vote on the budget bill. Let them crash the government. Don't pass the budget. Elon should be thrown into a hole and all of his assets seized, and every Cybertruck should be stacked in a pile and hit with an orbital strike. I agree. And instead, we now have a, what is it, $400 billion or $1 million? So some stupid number of money to buy armored Cybertrucks for the US military. The antagonists of capitalism are becoming super fucking obvious in America. Too bad we have a bunch of shit libs who whitewash history and brainwash people into civility politics versus fash. Hey, you're telling me, like, I'm getting a lot of shit from the Democrats and the liberals myself. So I blame the unconditional, unconditional accelerationism. Well, I mean, that is the cause, Zach. That's literally the cause. I know you didn't touch the fire. I know you didn't do shit. You did everything right, Lord Fluffy Art. You did. You don't deserve this. You don't. But it's still the best option because everyone around you did. Or not everyone, but a lot of people around you did. That's the thing. Like, there's no targeted way of doing this. Like, you're good. We're all in this together. And you know what? The left should help you. We should have, like, we need to start building organizations to specifically help people that are on the left. Like, honestly, at this point, Democrats are right-wing. The Democrats are right-wing at this point in time. Like, there is a line that has been drawn. They're on the right. None of us deserve this. All of us are suffering. It's just the increase in economic pressure and suffering in America will prevent the deaths of millions of people worldwide. I've been saying this for a while, and it's hard, you know? It's difficult to advocate for people on your side, people that are good people that tried their best to be harmed. But it's not like the harming of you is not the point here. That's not what, like, we want. The Dems are controlled opposition. They genuinely are. And a bit, but I'm trying to hold off until that actual segment. Because look at what Canada is doing here, right? So Trudeau might actually get to stay. Trump might have actually radicalized a lot of Canadians against the United States, and the anti-Trudeau crowd seems to be losing a lot of its fuel because of shit like this.
I've said unequivocally from the beginning, there's not a snowball's chance in hell that Canada will ever be the 51st state. I've said,
which is based. I need Canada and Mexico and every other country to start adding higher tariffs to, like, we just added new reciprocal tariffs on every country, including our allies, including Europe. We need to have these countries install higher tariffs. They should be retaliating. We need to stop playing this game. Now, like, Canada's saying this in somewhat like loud case, and mostly in private, somewhat in public. But in public, they're still trying to engage in a positive manner. We're seeing England engaging in a positive manner. We're seeing Australia engaging in a positive manner. We should be acting as if these are actions of an aggressive foreign nation who is threatening these other countries' sovereignty. AOC, Bernie, Raskin, Crockett are really the only ones left that I respect. Kinda, yeah. Also, the Dems have been right-wing since at least Carter. I mean, true, but not rhetorically. They've been functionally right-wing, especially economically, but now there's nothing. There's literally nothing for us there. Fuck the Democrats. Why would Canada ever want to downgrade itself to become a third world country? It wouldn't. He enabled the Liberals in Canada. Does Canada have nukes? Can't remember. No, they don't. They do not. Now, again, like, this is the new polling for Canada. That's a very big increase for the Liberals there. They will never tariff our sub buttons. Based. Raskin does a lot of stuff with Brian Tyler Cohen. I really like his constitutional law class that he does semi-regularly. That sounds pretty interesting. But, I mean, like, this might have really just been a gift to Canada. Canada seems to be playing the good rule book regarding weapons. They are, and they always kind of have been, because they've relied on us. But, I mean, look at this. Canada's Liberal Party was left for dead, but Trump might have just given it a second chance. This is insane. Yeah, like, the amount of increase in just 1 month is pretty fucking consistent. And the Conservatives are dropping consistently, too. Now, obviously, like, the Conservatives could still win, but there needs to be coalitions built, right? And on top of this, if this goes on for, like, another month, the Conservatives might keep dropping. I thought the NDP were supposed to be the good guys. I don't know much about the NDP. I don't really care. It's more just, I want the Conservatives to lose. The New Democratic Party, Social Democrats. Yeah, they sound all right. They sound all right. I would have to look further into them to really understand, but I would very much like the Liberals to win in Canada this time around rather than the Conservatives. And stuff like this makes it closer. And the Greens in America are shit carpe packs. The Greens in America are controlled opposition even more so than the Democrats. Jill Stein is a literal Russian asset.
Going with Canada, there was obviously a delay in implementing those tariffs.
I spoke to Governor Trudeau on numerous occasions.
Governor Trudeau.
And we'll see what happens.
We are I mean, he did step down.
For them. Look, the people would pay much less tax than they're paying right now.
Yes, but that number has been going down, Lord Fauviard. Did you not see the graph? Like, the election's not tomorrow.
Have perfect military protection. They don't have any military protection because and you take a look at what's going on out there. You have Russian ships, you have China ships, you have Chinese ships, you have a lot of ships out there, and you know, people are in danger.
He literally says nothing every time he talks.
They need our protection, yes.
It's insane that every time Donald Trump talks, it's just nothing. He says nothing. This from memory, so I might be slightly wrong. Social Democrats have a Muslim as their candidate, and unfortunately racism will prevail. I like the NDP. Yeah, that makes sense. Ultimately, just vote however the DSA guidelines say. Easiest way to simplify that shit. Man, the DSA really needs to up its shit, Captain Buggy. Because the DSA, to me, still feels like resist liberals. It does. It's not word salad, it's fucking diet. Makes sense. That tracks. I like it. So, we got new tariffs. As if the economy wasn't gonna hurt as much as, like, enough as it is. But, again, crash the economy. Please, continue. I'm an accelerationist now.
We're going to begin this busy Thursday at the White House. We're following economic and legal developments this hour.
President Trump has officially announced reciprocal tariffs on key U.S. trading partners. The president signed off on the sweeping plan in the Oval Office earlier today. Mr. Trump said the new tariffs will create a level playing field for American workers.
New data out Wednesday show. We're going to have.
Knack, don't be a Stalinist. Trump is a Stalinist. Don't be a Stalinist. You should be just a regular old socialist.
Great jobs for everybody. This is something that should have been done many years ago. The jobs are going to go up, and prices could go up somewhat short term, but prices will also go down. And I think the farmers are going to be helped by this very much.
NBC News senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez joins us now outside the White House. Gabe, we got to start with those tariffs. We've talked on this show.
Shortspork, I'm only bringing this up because the liberals keep attacking me for being a leftist at this point. I don't here's my thought on liberals. That's my thought on liberals. Fish hook theory. Thanks to Zach for sending me this image, by the way. But yeah. They're all essentially on the right at this point. I'm sorry, and I'm not talking about liberal voters. I'm talking about liberals in power. I'm talking about quite a lot of the liberals that are mad at leftists. Not all liberals. Liberals punch harder to the left and down than they do right and up, and that's the biggest issue that I have with them. True.
About how we expect them to work, but remind us how that might be.
Thanks
and
for the follow,
how would this
Radiant
ultimately
Dragon.
affect our viewers watching
I
right
know
now at home?
Shortspork.
Hi there, Zane, Clay, and Kate. Yeah, a lot going on here at the White House this afternoon. The president, after teasing it for several days, as you said, announcing finally those, what he calls reciprocal tariffs, essentially trying to, in the White House's view, make a level playing field when it comes to trade for both friend and foe.
So the thing I don't like about reciprocal tariffs, the thing that I find is really fucking stupid, is, like, imagine before all of this, just America, right? Under Biden even. We were the most powerful country in the world and the richest country in the world. Why would we need reciprocal tariffs with a much poorer country? Like, it's you're driving a Lamborghini and you're mad that you're paying more for, like, gas than someone who drives a moped. And you want them to pay as much as you do. That's where we're at right now. It's so stupid.
Across the world. Now, this all comes as President Trump is set to meet the Prime Minister of India at the White House behind me in just a short time. And the White House
Why do you want me to ban you, headless chicken? Why are you so, like, incessant on fighting me on this?
It hopes to get concessions from different countries around the world, basically every country potentially at stake here when it comes to tariffs and trying to, again, level the playing field. For example, India. The U.S. is India's largest trading partner, but President Trump today repeatedly said that
India name a single point that I have that mirrors corporate America. Name one, please. I'm begging you.
Very high tariffs on American goods, and they hope to change that. Critics, though, say that these tariffs will end up raising costs for American consumers. Kate and St. Clair.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated.
Like, you're just trying to bait me for whatever reason. Like, you don't even make any sense right now. Why the fuck do you care? Fuck it, hell. I was gonna talk about the economy first and then whinge about Democrats, but I suppose I don't get to choose that, do I? You know why I hate Democrats? Shit like this. This was reposted by the Democrats' Twitter page. Is healthcare a human right? I can't give you a yes or no to that. Motherfucker, the Democrats don't believe in healthcare as a human right. The literal Democrats cooed Bernie out in 2016. They cheated to make Hillary Clinton the nominee. They admitted this. The DNC chair stepped down and apologized. And ever since then, we have not had any Democrats loudly, like, trying to make healthcare as a human right a statement, like as a talking point. We have AOC, we have Bernie Sanders, we have it, and like, I guess Jamie Raskin. Like, why? What are they doing for you here? What are they doing for you here? They're just lying. How about this?
Power of the purse. Maybe it's wasteful, maybe it's not. I have no idea. You have no idea. But it's a blatant violation of the law and the Constitution.
First of all,
we have the power of the purse. Maybe it's wasteful, maybe it's not.
You literally need to start being meaner. Like, the Democrats are too nice. That's my issue with them. They're not trying. Well, it might be wasteful, it might be not. Just stop. There's no waste here. You have yet to provide a single example of waste. One singular example of waste was not provided by Doge at all. Every claim that they've put out has been provably false and has been debunked. So not a single one has.
I have no idea. You have no idea. But it's a blatant violation of the law and the Constitution.
As am I, Headless Chicken. I'm far more cruel to Republicans than I ever am to Dems. But I'm fucking mad at the Dems. What am I like? It's like as soon as you criticize the Democrats at all, then you are helping the Republicans. Do you understand the mentality for that? That any criticism directed at the Dems is somehow helping Republicans?
And apparently my Republican colleagues are so weak and afraid of Donald Trump and Elon Musk.
Now this is good
they're willing
rhetoric.
To undermine their own constitutional authority just to please them. You're giving away your own power in fealty to
This is
Donald
good
Trump.
rhetoric.
So, Mr.
I
Chairman,
want more of that.
I ask that for our next hearing, we actually do some oversight and accountability of what this administration is doing right now, not what the Biden administration did years ago. And I yield back.
You want to know how Republicans do messaging? First of all, obviously they lie. But secondly, here's how Democrats react when Republicans stop sending taxpayer dollars to foreign countries to fund trans surgeries. First of all, entirely made up claim from the Senate Republicans' fucking Twitter page.
We have to Trump!
I haven't seen people so aroused in a very, very long time.
We have to fight this in the streets.
What's your name?
Tell us your name.
Like, they just make fun of people.
Give me that ID again.
All right, you don't get to talk to my mods like that. Come back in an hour when you're cooler. Jesus Christ.
So what? You do what? Could you let me see the ID again?
They say in the capital city, there are no neutrals found. You're either with the
On the border,
Union or a scabby Musk bloodhound.
Like, this is resist libs shit. This is doing nothing. They're literally dismantling the government. They're blocking the courts. They're literally openly ignoring the courts. And then beyond that, like, they have all of your personal information. Elon Musk has set up private servers inside of the Treasury. Remember Benghazi? Remember Hillary Clinton's private servers and how mad all of the Republicans got about it? Suddenly, none of that's a fucking issue.
On the border, the choice is simple. Kamala Harris supports increasing the number of Border Patrol agents. Donald Trump blocked a bill to increase the number
This is
of Border
good
Patrol
messaging.
agents. Kamala Harris supports investing in new technology to block fentanyl from entering the country. Donald Trump blocked funding for technology to block fentanyl from entering the country. Kamala Harris supports spending more money to stop human traffickers.
Thank you, Zach. Like, this is good rhetoric. This is how you should be messaging. Here's Rashida Tlaib.
Man in the Planet, and Russ Bout, the guy who wrote Project 2025, wants to shut down the 911 agency for fraud and consumer protection, where many of us call the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. You know, this is where my residents call
It's not
for
they
mortgage
want to, by the way. They've shut it
to
down.
fight against different scams that they fall victim to because we haven't done a good job preventing folks from out of the country and others targeting our seniors and so many others. Financial predators like Wall Street and CEOs despise the consumer.
Well, like, that's the thing, though. She was. But the rhetoric, like, her positions were bad. But her rhetoric was all right. Like, that ad, at the very least, had good rhetoric. Her entire campaign had shit rhetoric. Now, we knew her positions were bad. I talked about this well before the election. Kamala Harris will not change things for the better for you, but you should still vote for her over Donald Trump because she is the easier opponent to work against to create positive change. That was my, like, entire argument before the election. It's still my argument now, is that these people on the right hate you and they want to steal everything from you because they do, and they're open about it. And the Democrats are just, okay, whatever, fuck it. You need to tell them, go fuck yourself, you loser incel sellouts. You do. You need to be mean. For a second, I thought she meant like actual 911, long day. Yeah, it is a long day. This is what they're saying instead. What Democrats did today. This was from yesterday. Every single Senate Democrat voted against confirming Tulsi Gabbard for the Director of National Intelligence. Great, good for you. Senator Raphael Warnock introduced a capping prescription costs act to cap all of the out-of-pocket costs on prescription drugs. Motherfucker, what does Congress do right now? What is the last bill that's passed through Congress? It's the Lake and Riley Act. They haven't put anything through Congress because Congress functionally doesn't exist anymore. Everything happens through the executive branch. That's what they keep talking about. And also, yes, legalize all drugs, Zach. Like, that's the best way to deal with drug addiction. But like, on top of it, Arkansas state Democrats successfully voted down a bill to allow municipalities to remove fluoride from their water systems. Cool. That's state level shit is decent. But on a federal level, you're not doing anything. Coalition of 191 House and Senate Democrats sent a letter demanding the removal of Elon Musk's operatives from the CFPB. How about maybe you show up? How about maybe you have a speech in which you say, after this, we're going to walk down to the CFPB building and I'm going to march with you. And we're going to show them that we care, that they can't do this, that this is our democracy. How about you do that, huh? You know, because that worked last time. Now, obviously, we're talking about Democrats. They don't need to do an insurrection. You just need to be loud. You need to be in a coalition of people. You had 191 House and Senate Democrats, all of you marching with a whole bunch of people. Like, make this an event. There will be a speech. We will have like speeches throughout the day, and then afterwards we're going to march on the CFPB office. We're going to march on the White House. Like, the liberals will step up to oppose fascism. Is like that. The chances of that is gone. They're not doing anything. As a collective, they don't care about us as individuals unless we have the collective behind us. What if they walked in there and did what Elon Musk did and got rid of his servers? Literally, they should. Elon Musk is not an elected official. He's not part of the government. He has no actual government affiliation. He is heading a non-government organization. The fact that Elon Musk is hiring private security to keep elected officials out of government buildings is fucking insane. Just move them. You are the elected official. They are not. Move them out of the way. Push them out of the way. Arrest them. Democrat Ken Jenkins won a special election for Westchester County executive, soundly defeating his Trump-backed opponents. Lovely, you won a special election. Good for you. What did Democrats do today? Nothing. Everyone that bought a Tesla or Starlink voted with their money? True. Remember, liberals got clapped for siding with czars like, bro, it's not happening. These motherfuckers fundamentally are closer to conservatives regardless of the context. They are controlled opposition. Like, they are. They really are. It is just fishhook theory. It's incredibly frustrating, but not all of them, right? There are some that are doing a good job with their messaging. Here's another one. Here's Senator Whitehouse.
Against Russian intelligence operations and Russia's criminal operations in the United States.
But at the same time, before we watch this, their messaging is good, but what are they doing about it? Like, remember what Republicans did when Democrats were in power? How they made everything a show? every single thing had to be a viral moment, had to be cinematic, had to be loud and argue. Like, it is bullshit. Left and right are not the same, but and fuck politics means just like what? I'm not going to pay attention to the world and let everyone fuck me. The fight isn't left versus right. It's up versus down, but left and right are not the same.
It's the FBI, it's the Department of Justice, and it's our intelligence community.
Yeah, like, that was good. Great. You won an election.
Sent powerful signals that they are shutting down our defenses when it comes to Russia. And we're about to head to the Munich Security Conference, where we are seeing Mr. Art of the Deal and his operatives giving away every piece of leverage that we have over Putin with respect to Ukraine. It is unilateral disarmament.
It is. He's
to throw
correct.
Ukraine under the bus and give Putin what he wants. So mark my words. This Patel guy will come back to haunt you.
He's not wrong.
Every piece of evidence shows that, and it is not Democrat evidence. It's his own words, it's his own colleagues, and it's judges evaluating his credibility. And Trump Russia is going to come roaring back, if it's not already back. We should be on our guard about this nominee, and we should be on our guard about Trump Russia.
All right, yeah, no, you're right, Captain Buggy. His fit is good, but let's not do a Vosh stream. He's wearing that shirt. No, but like, understand, right? The Democrats have quite a lot of leverage. Doge is less popular than most of the agencies that it's defunding. Both by Democrats and Republicans, there is a significant portion of agencies that are being affected by Doge, which have higher popularity than Doge does. Use that. It's not like you can't, 90% of America loves Doge. It's bullshit. They will lie. So fight back and show people the truth. Ukraine is fucked now, Sweden official, unfortunately. And like, here's some more evidence of that. This is Republicans reacting to the after effects of Doge.
Somebody to tell me they're lying right now because of what the do you mean that I'm not gonna get my SNAP benefits? What the do you mean?
We are possibly going to lose our farm if NRCS doesn't hold up their contract with us on the EQIP program. Because of the executive orders, there's a pause or a freeze on the funding.
No, Lord Fluffy
They're not
Art.
able to pay out on the stuff that we completed or anything going forward.
Beyond betrayed. They used us during the campaign, the elected officials.
It does hurt, leftist Leo. So use these. It hurts. That's good. That means there is an emotional connection there, that you can use this to message to people who don't pay attention. This is what Doge is doing. Doge is less popular than all of these agencies. Elon Musk is an unelected official who is like doing a whole bunch of illegal shit that is harming Americans. And these are the Americans.
Party. They actually told us that
Lord
he was
Fluffy Art,
not
I will
going
not.
to touch the
Good framing.
documented people.
I mean, you're an educator. You didn't vote for Trump eliminating federal funds.
No.
here.
Yes, you did.
I did not vote for that. I do not think that's what the voters want. If we have federal cuts, then that's going to mean bigger classroom size.
Like, understand that right now the Republican messaging is dog shit. Like, if you want to fight against it, this is the best time. You want to see what Stephen Miller's talking about right now? He's just gobbling Trump's cock right now. That's all he's doing. None of this rhetoric is in any way remotely useful or convincing.
They look like fools, and Donald Trump looks more brilliant and more genius every single day as he's implementing his
Yes, he
agenda.
looks more brilliant and more genius every day, where Elon Musk had a 50-minute press conference in the Oval Office as Trump sat there fucking quietly, as Elon Musk's little kid told Trump that he's not the president and he needs to leave. Sure, he looks glorious. The first time ever that an unelected official stood next to the president in the Oval Office and gave an uninterrupted 50-minute speech.
And it's working, and our lives.
And Lord Fluffy Art, they want to get rid of that. Your boss isn't going to give you healthcare benefits anymore either.
Getting better by the minute. They look like fools, and Donald Trump looks.
I mean, he's a demon, Mac, so like, he'll look like a demon. This is the rhetoric of the right. Do you really think that if we wanted to maybe oppose this, we couldn't form a cohesive argument?
But this population in Palestine is hostile, it's uneducated, it's even more radicalized than they were at the beginning of
this. Is just like, by the way, this is final solution JQ shit.
I mean, now they have no
but with
homes
Palestinians.
at all. They're even more hateful of the Israelis. And their birth rate is explosive. The average Palestinian woman has 5.5 babies. The average Israeli woman has only 2.5 babies. So
that's okay, Captain Buggy.
They're a threat. Not to mention the national security threat. There is no way you can have these.
Yeah, I wonder why, but like none of that even matters. This is straight up JQ shit, but with Palestinians. We are speed running our way to the final solution.
Has only 2.5 babies.
We're talking about birth rates.
Demographically, they're a threat.
Demographically, the people that are in an open air concentration camp that just got the shit bombed out of it for a year, that we are going to forcibly remove and take over, are demographically a threat to Israel. Motherfucker, like, if Palestine was in any way a threat to Israel, they would have done more than October 7th. That was like, let's give it our all. That was October 7th.
Mention the national security threat. There is no way you can have these two peoples living side by side.
Interesting.
It is. Naki, it is exactly the same rhetoric as Nazi rhetoric used against the Jews. Everything they say. That's why I call Netanyahu Jitler. People still can't understand that you can be Jewish and a Nazi. Israel was built by Jewish Nazis. The Likud party were literally a militia that tried to work with Nazis to get the Palestinians out of the area. Like, there is no indication that there's any real difference between these. Like, yes, it is blowback. But at the same time, the rhetoric is just Nazi rhetoric. And then here's Donald Trump. This is our glorious leader who is not in any way in charge in one of his weaves.
And instead of using hydraulic, like on tractors that can handle anything from hurricanes to lightning to anything, they use magnets. It's a new theory. Magnets are going to lift the planes up, and it doesn't work. And they had billions and billions of dollars.
What the fuck is he talking about?
I met the architect. I said, have you designed a ship before? This is one of the biggest ships in the world. It's like landing at LaGuardia Airport.
What?
Ship before. This is one of the biggest ships in the world. It's like landing at LaGuardia Airport.
What are you talking about? Ships landing at the LaGuardia Airport, one of the biggest ships in the world. It's an airport.
But you look at the
you have so much leverage to use.
Going through, and we have to straighten it out. We have great people.
So much leverage, and then beyond that,
or last night,
the economic damage that this is doing to the average American.
President Trump signed.
Yes, he did have like a thing on magnets before. I don't know. Like he rambles about nonsense all the time.
New 25% tariffs. 25% on all steel and aluminum imports to the United States. The tariffs apply to all shipments of the metals, including from Canada and Mexico, despite...
Do you understand how much more expensive shit will be if steel and aluminum cost 25% more, if not 50% more with a retaliatory tariff?
Granting a 30-day delay of the blanket tariffs
not
on
50,
all
but
goods from those countries last week. U.S. steel and aluminum suppliers may benefit from the decision as they'll have the chance to undercut foreign competitors. But Americans could soon feel the impact on their wallets as aluminum and steel are used in a wide range of products.
This is literally Donald Trump.
I've banned left turn signals. There will be no more Baja Blast. I'm sending the wasps after the left-handed people. They sting a lot. Saw them flying and said, wow, those guys can sting. We're taking all the grocery carts. We're putting them in the ocean. We're putting my face on the dollar bill. Nobody's ever done that before.
We're taking the grocery carts and we're putting them in the ocean is my favorite.
Hand sanitizer. It's a liberal myth. I'm banning cul-de-sacs. If you live in a cul-de-sac, I'm going to kill. I've given the Kool-Aid Man, access to launch codes.
Thank you to Ginger Fluff. No, he did this. He actually did this.
Products from appliances, smartphones, soda cans, and more, and higher import costs would filter through.
I'm just glad they didn't send the wasps after the left-handed people. I really don't like wasps.
So, Richard, why does this make a lot of sense?
Well, first of all, your analysis is right. This will save some jobs.
I was waiting for you to say it doesn't.
Well, it doesn't, but I'm trying to explain it. It will save some jobs in this country, or maybe even create a few in the steel and aluminum industries. But it will do so at enormous cost. Because there's far fewer jobs.
Because they hate you, Captain Buggy. That's why we don't.
There than, for example, there's in the construction industry, which uses steel, or the automobile industry. So the knock-on effects of this will, one, add to inflation, and two, will reduce sales for other businesses. So we'll have unemployment in other parts of the economy. And then, Mika, and the reason it doesn't make sense, is this will invite retaliation. The idea that we can do this and other countries won't act in kind. So this basically will start something of a trade war. And that will be, there's no, like most wars, there's no winners. This will add to cost. So what worries me about this, and this is something the president believes is an article of faith. It's basically, it's what economists call import substitution. Instead of importing things, we're going to substitute it by domestic, but it's...
We don't have domestic manufacturing for steel and aluminum at the level that we need for these products. Our domestic manufacturing cannot match up against what our imports are. This is bullshit. This is we want this in the long term. Okay, great. You want to build industry in America. Okay, fine. Are you going to pay the workers more? Because, you know, the reason that we import shit is because we don't want to pay, like our companies rather, don't want to pay wages to the people doing the jobs. Are you going to install regulation that make it so that these companies need to pay wages to convince people to have these jobs so that these industries can come to America? No, of course the fuck you're not. Everything is going to cost more, and none of this is going to do anything in any way beneficial. I mean, unless this is just crashing the economy, which still shows that like a 64% odds on the poly market, which I fucking hate, for by March 15th the economy to crash. I still hope, you know, the budget bill could do this, but like they could just crash the economy by accident before that. They don't want to crash the economy. They want a recession, because through the recession, they can have their corporate buddies buy up all of the shit that has lost value immediately. Like they can coast through a recession and they can buy up all of the unsold and unused and lost value stocks and then form monopolies. Right? Like, that's the goal here. But if they crash the economy too far, then it's more difficult for them to do this. They could have not tariffed and just did subsidies like corn. I mean, that was also another option, but obviously they're obsessed with tariffs. And the idea of these tariffs are still fucking stupid. Why does one of like the world's strongest countries need to tariff a poorer country, like equivalently even? We have to put ourselves on the same level as, like, I don't know, Nambia, if we're importing some shit from there. We need the same tariffs. Why? Protectionism economics is the fucking US empire to protect more profits for billionaires. It's the path towards cyberpunk. Like, I'm very much against protectionism. The only thing that I can think of that was a protectionist policy that I was in favor of was the CHIPS Act under Biden. Silly libtard, don't you understand when prices go up under Trump, that means they're actually going down? Ah, I see now.
Expensive, so it doesn't make sense. And what's so odd about it? Can I say one last thing?
Yeah, we'll get to Putin in a second.
The inherited economy that's in pretty good shape. It's humming along at close to 3%.
Remember, the inflation rate went up to 3%, and Donald Trump immediately followed that with a tweet saying Biden's inflation.
Inflation is way down.
Things were moving in the right direction.
Employment was way up.
Yeah.
What this threatens to do is disrupt what was basically a very strong economy. And he could have done some tweaks to it and taken credit for it. What I think he will rue the day here, because at the end, Americans are going to care about inflation more than anything else. And this is
when the prices go up, you're going to start hearing MAGA saying it's actually patriotic to pay high prices. That's going to be their argument.
It's going to set in motion trends, whereas there's going to be new unemployment in steel-dependent industries, and there's going to be inflation. So the president, I think, risks the stability of an economy that he inherited that was in pretty good...
Remember, high inflation and tariffs plus banking insecurity is what led to the Great Depression.
Which, by the way, allowed him to focus on other things, like the border or anything else. And the idea
people
that he
have been
wants
doing
his
that,
focus
Mac.
to
People
have
need to
be
do that
on
more.
An economy that's in trouble. I do not understand the political.
It is. It's Hoover all over again. It's exactly the same. What's up, Oxpecker? You're audibly in sync with my TV and phone speaker. It sounds trippy as hell.
Economic wisdom of it. So getting back to your question, I don't think it makes sense by his lights.
So how do you explain it?
Yeah,
Richard?
definitely
You just
sub to
talked-
the
you've
Aussie
been
streamers.
discussing the economy and foreign policy, with
Including
Donald
me
Trump for
and
30
Zach.
years, well before he was in politics. Why
Oh, by
is
the
he
way, speaking of, definitely go check out Zach, because base streamer.
doing this? If he knows prices are going to go up, it's just the way it works. His own economists are telling him that. His own treasury knows that. Why is he doing it?
Donald Trump has 2 articles of faith.
Why is he doing? It's because he has no idea what he's doing. That's the answer.
Propelled him for 4 decades, maybe now, longer, 5 decades.
The man's brain is soup and he's not in charge. Have a look at this. Modi came to America to meet with the president. Excuse me? What the fuck? So yesterday, Elon Musk gets to do a 50-minute uninterrupted press conference in the White House while Donald Trump sits in the cuck chair quietly. And today he's meeting Modi, and these are the photos that are being taken. Come on. Pay attention. Guy owns the country. This is the richest man in the world. Again, who is illegally altering government functions, who is breaking into government buildings, installing private servers. He is blocking elected officials from doing their job. He's cutting entire agencies. He's literally openly plotting, openly pondering whether he wants to ignore the courts. Yale Law Journal describes Article 3, how Article 2 and 1 apply to Article 3, explains that judge conduct for tenure and the removal of a judge for conduct violation. A federal judge can be removed without impeachment and conviction of Congress. That's how I read it anyway. Interesting. Like, we're in the bad timeline. Jesus fucking Christ is right. His kid told Trump to shut the fuck up and that he's not the president. He needs to go away. Right? This is the president. And then on top of this, we had Donald Trump speak to Vladimir Putin yesterday. Now, before Putin came in, this was a question asked by, an actual journalist at the White House press conference.
I have a few things for you, but on the commitment by President Trump, he said that he and President Putin agreed to visit each other's respective
You're right,
nations.
Oxpecker.
Are there any preconditions that President Trump has that President Putin must do before he goes and meets with him, withdrawing some forces, withdrawing all forces, anything like that?
Not that I'm aware of. That doesn't mean
Nothing.
they don't exist, but I was just talking with the
If there was any preconditions we had for them, she would have known about them.
president in our national security team. I wasn't made aware of any conditions, but if they exist...
They don't exist.
And on the president himself, he styles himself as this master negotiator. He is now deploying these negotiations, saying that they start immediately. We did hear from the Defense Secretary, Pete Hegseth, though, today, saying that NATO membership is not realistic for Ukraine, and neither is returning to pre-2014 borders. Aren't they giving away bargaining chips before these negotiations have even started?
Again, I haven't talked to the president about Ukraine's NATO membership, and he appointed several individuals to negotiate on his behalf. He's directly involved in these negotiations as well, and I'm sure if you ask him that question in the near future, when you're able to, he'll give you an answer. I just don't want to get ahead of him on it.
It's actually insane. Here's what we think about Europe when it comes to all of this. Ukraine war. European security is not a primary focus, says the US. I feel like the Trump admin puts these White House speakers there to be embarrassed. Like, come on, surely you can find a better people that are not looking stupid. No, they hire them just like Fox does. You just have to be blonde and hot.
An arrival
Remotely.
that was preceded by a blizzard of rhetoric. Words that have instilled fear, not in the hearts of historic foes, but allies. US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth was welcomed to NATO today by his UK counterpart, posing for a message at least one of them wants the world to hear.
It's such a strong relationship, it's so much to discuss. Absolutely.
But no time to answer this.
Will you be urging the UK to increase defence spending?
Okay, media back, please.
Thank you.
Thanks, media. Please move back. Thank you.
Before this meeting, those around the table were unsure of whether they would get a real sense of the United States' true hopes for Ukraine.
As in, we're just giving it up. We've surrendered.
Within 2 minutes, they were left in no doubt.
We want, like you, a sovereign and prosperous Ukraine. But we must start by recognizing that returning to Ukraine's pre-2014 borders is an unrealistic objective. The United States...
This is just conceding everything to Russia. This is, okay, we're done. Here you go, you can have it.
Does not...
That was what Russia wanted.
...believe that NATO membership for Ukraine is a realistic outcome
that too.
of a negotiated settlement.
Now, just to butt in here really quickly, here is NATO's Mark
Just
Rutte.
now, Rutte said he had had a productive conversation with Hegseth and that they had agreed on the need to put Ukraine in the best possible position ahead of negotiations.
There was never a promise of NATO membership.
With me, Douglas Herbert, our foreign affairs commentator. And Doug, I wonder, big picture, what you made of the message of Mark Rutte there today.
Well, a few things struck me. I mean, first of all, how little can you actually say in 20 minutes? NATO Secretary
Same,
Generals,
Captain
Nadia,
Buggy.
are
Called this a year ago.
wooden in their language. They managed to say very little of substance or of news value in many words. Mark Rutte is a steady as she goes, if ever there was one, steward of the NATO.
By the way, yesterday we covered a news article saying that Putin is likely to invade other parts of Europe. The entire point here is Putin takes what he's gained. NATO is unavailable to Ukraine anymore. We can't even help them. Ideally, to America at the very least. Russia gets a couple years to rearm and get ready, and then they get to continue.
Of the Western Alliance. We weren't expecting any groundbreaking revelations today, but what struck me here was the degree to which...
Oh, don't worry, we're going to look at Poland in a minute.
New, he recently took over from Jens Stoltenberg, relatively new NATO chief, bent over backwards to make it sound like and look like that he is not in any ways at loggerheads with the man now occupying the Oval Office, Donald Trump. In terms when he was talking about, in terms of
blood and soil
spending, in terms of defense production, in terms of their priorities on how they want to end the war, he literally was marching, at least rhetorically, in lockstep with Donald Trump. There was no daylight between them whatsoever, which is... I say it's a takeaway and remarkable in many ways to hear that the degree to which he wants to sound like he and Donald Trump are on the same page in this, and nothing to see here.
But like, this guy said that Ukraine was never promised NATO membership. Like, even the guy who's in lockstep with Donald Trump.
And as to who may provide any post-peace process security forces...
To be clear, as part of any security guarantee, there will not be U.S. troops deployed to Ukraine.
And to conclude, an admonishment that NATO allies were not spending enough on defence.
Secretary Hegseth, we hear you.
And I think that we
hear your commitment to NATO, to Article 5, to a sovereign Ukraine, and to
lack of commitment, that is,
with Europe. We also hear your concerns.
What unfolded this afternoon was a triple-pronged diplomatic onslaught by the new US administration.
Thank you for your wisdom.
By the way, Zelensky has said there will be no deal without them getting involved in it.
Secretary Scott Bessent loomed over President Zelensky to talk life after war.
President Trump has a plan to end this war.
And to steal everything they can from Ukraine.
And we would like an economic cooperation agreement.
There we go.
With NATO and Ukraine addressed, it was left to the president himself to talk to Russia. This afternoon, President Trump posted on his social media platform Truth Social that he had a lengthy and highly productive phone call with President Vladimir Putin, saying, "We both agree."
The literal act of talking to Putin before the rest of your allies is insane.
We want to stop the millions of deaths taking place in the war with Russia, Ukraine. We agreed to work together very closely. We have also agreed to have our respective teams start negotiations immediately, and we will begin by calling President Zelensky.
Now, we're going to continue this video, but we're going to jump around a little bit. By the way, here is a Putin critic and financier, Bill Browder, and his thoughts on this.
Ukraine cast on February the 24th, 2022.
Oh, I know, of course, Knack.
Bill Browder, what do you make of what Sebastian Gorka said?
It's very frustrating to hear this type of talk coming from America. So, I mean, I think they're celebrating in the Kremlin right now.
Popping bottles with the ice.
Popping champagne.
Ah.
The fact that Putin, who's been frozen out of Western, he's a war criminal, according to us, has now been given an hour and a half with the most powerful man in the free world, the President of the United States. It's a huge, huge victory of all sorts. And then you put on top of that the statement that Ukraine has to...
So far, what we've had Netanyahu, we've had Modi, we now have Putin. When's Xi coming to visit?
Give up its sovereign territory to Russia, that NATO is not an option for Ukraine, that there will be no American troops in any kind of security arrangements afterwards.
I'm sure they're talking to Elon. Elon and Putin were talking for years. Like, even when Biden was in charge. Hey, Viz, if you get a second, can you check your Discord? Sorry, just a heads up. Yeah, one sec. Cool, yeah, no, that's all fine. It's just, yeah, no, that was fucked. I'll deal with it, don't worry. Here is Lithuania, and their response. Dan did so. Ukraine, Trump allies himself with a war criminal, sold out Ukraine, rather, and a dictator and an asshole. This is true. No, don't be sorry. Thank you.
The moment of payment is always unpleasant and even painful, but United States...
Everyone thank the based mods that we have, like Leftist Leo.
States were justified in criticism to Europe for not paying for our own defense after Second World War. Americans were developing their defense industry and their army. What was Europe doing? Investing in our economy. Now we see that that was not the right path, and it will be a very swift resolution. Whether we wake up and actually our defense industry and our armed forces, our capabilities develop very swiftly and very significantly, or we will be in a very difficult situation, to put it diplomatically. However, it is important to note that United States and Europe are and will be and must be allies. This world has become as small as never.
This is Lithuania. Like, they're fucking terrified right now. Here's Poland.
Turning his back on previous U.S. policy when it comes to Ukraine. Donald Trump seems to be turning his back on previous U.S. policy when it comes to Ukraine, saying in a Fox News interview on Monday that the country may or may not be Russian someday. Mr. Trump also said he has told Kyiv he wants something.
That's a good point, Ik Ben Dead.
For ongoing U.S. assistance. Have a listen.
They have tremendously valuable land in terms of rare earth, in terms of oil and gas, in terms
Oh,
of
look,
things.
that's what we want to take from
I want
them.
our money secured, because we're spending hundreds of billions of dollars, and you know they may make a deal.
You're
they may
exactly
not
right,
make a
Dan
deal.
Ditso.
They may be Russian someday, or they may not be Russian someday, but we're going to have all this money in there, and I say I want it back.
Well, in response to those comments, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said Tuesday, quote, a significant part of Ukraine wants to become Russian.
This is untrue, by the way.
And has already become Russian. Well, look, Poland not only shares a border with Ukraine, it also shares the wish that Russia will ultimately not win this war. I sat down with Polish President Andrzej Duda right here in Dubai earlier today to speak about the future of the conflict and the roles other countries may play in trying to bring an end to it. Have a listen.
The third anniversary of Russian aggression against Ukraine, the war is still going on, and a lot of people...
He's talking about Crimea. I think he is, but, like, it doesn't matter.
Especially those people of goodwill are asking themselves the question how to bring this war to an end, and to be more precise, how to make sure that Russia stops attacking Ukraine. And I keep repeating one thing. As a neighbor of Ukraine, as the one who is watching this conflict and has been watching it from the start on the one hand, but on the other hand, as the one who has been actively supporting Ukraine in defending its sovereignty and independence, we have to make sure, those people have to make sure that Russia does not win this war. This is the most important thing. Russia must not win this war. I'm not saying that Russia has to be defeated. I'm saying Russia must not win this war, which means to me that Russia cannot draw benefit from this war. This is the most important thing which has to be obtained today by the international
We
community.
need Russia to lose the war, not just not benefit. We need them to lose. We need them to suffer. Again, it needs to hurt when you touch the fire.
We, Poland, have been supporting Ukraine right from the start. Not only have we sent enormous defense military support to Ukraine, we were the first ones who decided to send armaments to Ukraine. We have donated more than 360 main battle tanks to Ukraine, but also other equipment over
It's always burning, leftist Leo. It's always burning.
Hub. And right from the start, Poland has been a transportation hub for Ukraine. It is through Poland that transports with armaments have been going for Ukraine. It's through Poland that humanitarian support has been flowing to Ukraine. We have got the only motorway from Western Europe to Ukraine, and we have got a big international airport close to the border with Ukraine. So indeed, the role that Poland is playing is
Maybe it gets Russia to pay some of the debt. I mean, it's not going to happen.
of key importance. What I'm counting on, I'm counting that President
Literally the whack job coming in here and calling everyone else whack jobs. Let's take a look at what people in Ukraine feel like, huh? That's a good one.
In the Ukrainian capital, the mood is one of disappointment after US President Donald Trump held individual calls, first with Vladimir Putin and then Volodymyr Zelensky.
I find it difficult to understand why anyone would make the first call to the president of a country that has attacked another country, a president who is a terrorist. I don't want to be pessimistic, but it looks like Ukraine has been betrayed.
Trump is not the same kind of man as Biden, but on the other hand, he can put pressure on people. Some say
Fucking right-wing trolls again. Get the fuck out of here.
he may have backup plans, but these plans will not benefit Ukraine, the Ukraine we would like to have.
Trump's defense chief on Thursday denied the US president was betraying Ukraine. Earlier, Pete Hegseth
is
said it was
objectively
unrealistic for
betraying
Kyiv to
Ukraine.
expect to recover lost territory or join NATO, as had been pledged.
It's so difficult. I do not even know what to say. I think we should not wait. We need to build our own strong military force instead. All those promises, it's like a man proposing to a girl and then changing his mind. We have to build a strong state and a strong army so that we would not have to rely on anyone.
Trump plans to rob Ukraine of as much as possible,
True.
not to make peace here.
Look, the people in Ukraine know what's up. They know what's up.
Kyiv has tried to urgently forge ties with the Trump administration after he took office, vowing to end the war in Ukraine. Trump appears now to have conditioned US support for Ukraine on gaining access to its natural resources. Zelensky has said he's ready to do a deal on minerals. He's likely to meet the US.
It's not even just a deal. We're just going to take those resources. There's no chance of making an actual deal. And yeah, he's a bastard, prerequisite banana. Let's talk about what John Bolton is saying. Now, John Bolton is a piece of shit, but he is correct here.
I is one of the few people to see how President Trump and President Putin interact when the cameras aren't necessarily around. Ambassador John Bolton was Trump's national security advisor in his first term, and it's great to have you here.
This dude's like a piece of shit going back to the Iraq War, but
Ambassador, because you've previously said that you believe Putin sees Trump as what you described as an easy mark. You were there for their first meeting in Helsinki. What are your expectations for this one?
Well, I don't have any expectations anymore. I think we know exactly what's going to happen. President Trump has effectively surrendered to Putin before the negotiations have even begun. The positions that Defense Secretary Hegseth announced in Brussels, which I'm sure I'd be stunned if Trump didn't convey them directly to Putin in their phone call, constitute terms of a settlement that could have been written in the Kremlin. Maybe they were written in the Kremlin.
It'll be a while, Captain Buggy.
Got out in propaganda channels, but it's a complete reversal of the...
It's not just fuck Trump, it's fuck America at this point. Our entire country is the devil. We are all Hitler now.
U.S. and NATO position on a number of issues. For example, up until today, the
And Jonah
official
Jameson
American
mustache.
position was that Ukraine should be returned to full sovereignty and territorial integrity.
True.
That's gone. The question of NATO membership, as far back as 2008, had been that ultimately Ukraine would become a NATO member.
There was never a promise for that. There was just a road set out, just like we do for a bunch of other countries. They have to fit in and pass the requirements for this. American empire equals claiming to be pro-human rights while doing the most horrific shit on a larger scale in human history. It is. We are, like, people give me shit for this, but we're worse than China right now.
It doesn't look like that's around anymore either. Putin has scored a whole series of victories today. It's hard to encompass them all, but I think one, in addition to these substantive concessions, is that he has now, it seems, exactly what he wants. Putin doesn't
I know
want to
you disagree.
negotiate with Zelensky.
If not now, give it a month, Matty Holmes.
He wants to negotiate with Trump because he thinks he'll get more out of him, and he's absolutely right.
On your point that you just made about...
I know, Captain Buggy, and I know you think that because you're a Vosh viewer. Not at all, but fucking MAGA gringos and fucking pro-Trump gringos are, we know, there are good people in the United States. No, yeah, I know. I'm not talking about the people of the United States. I'm talking about the federal government. Like, obviously there's good people in the United States, but the government as a whole is Hitler right now. Look, we're getting ready to do some wild shit. U.S. Army training for drone warfare. Now, I mean, obviously drone warfare is becoming quite more common, but if we are going to go to war and we're training for drone warfare, I assume that means that we plan to use it. And we've also seen that those drone swarms that are powered by AI are also being built now. So what if in 2, 3, 4, 5 months we have AI drone swarms that we're using to literally annihilate entire villages? What federal government? I mean, Elon Musk. We need to convince the government to work for us, convince Elon Musk to work for us. I mean, he is... Just like, we need to find Elon Musk's ketamine dealer and hold him hostage. That's the way forward. Like, I'm kidding, but also... I know drones have been used for a while, Matty Holmes. Thank you for the follow. Declare drone warfare to be a war crime? I agree. It is a war crime. Like, even Ukraine is committing war crimes with the drones. You watch them. There are injured soldiers on the ground that get finished off by the drone. That is a war crime. You're not allowed to kill wounded soldiers that are not shooting back at you, that they are, wounded and they can't fight. You're not supposed to kill these folk. Drone warfare makes it so you kind of have to. But, like, yes, definitely. Someone find Elon's ketamine dealer. I'm begging you.
War has been raging in Ukraine for nearly 3 years. Ukrainian armed forces desperately trying to hold on to their land.
Like, like, when I say that Ukraine's also doing it, I'm not saying, like, they're not doing it for the war crimes. It's just kind of how drone warfare works, And that's why it's not only immoral and unethical, but also it should be a war crime. The situation we have in Ukraine is a little difficult because, they're also being targeted by this. They have to fight back somehow. They're using whatever they have in their arsenal. But, like, this is a war crime, and the U.S. military wanting to take part in it is being, okay, we're going to do war crimes. We know that Russia does war crimes. We know Israel does war crimes. Do we want to join in? It seems like it. Viking Cat, when they call drones suicide drones for dramatic effect, they should call them murder drones? Yeah. It's a part of how the warfare works exactly. You're 100% on point here. Thank you. Matty Holmes, the U.S. military has been using drones so much that it heavily featured in Stargate SG-1, a show that was heavily supported by the U.S. Armed Forces. It tracks. It is good that those small drones aren't used for assassinations. Wait until we have the tiny little drone swarms that are powered by AI. Zach, America is a virgin to war crimes? Well, I mean, obviously not, but...
The evolving battlefield and a race.
I like to think that we change positively over time.
And with no boots on the ground, the U.S. is taking notes.
The character of war is changing at a speed we've never seen before. It's unprecedented. The last 3 years, the lessons we observe from the Ukraine war, and also some from the recent Israeli experience.
Lessons American troops are using in training here in Germany.
Then just pan your camera down.
One key takeaway from Ukraine: drone warfare. Ukrainian soldiers hiding in trenches using drones to not
We've
only
literally gone
identify
back
the
to World
enemy,
War
but
I.
also attack. The machines used on the battlefield in Ukraine and to take the fight to Moscow.
That's going to be the next part of it.
For experts in warfare,
Now, again, I have been in favor of these drones hitting Russia inside of Russia.
game changer. What is like the single most significant thing that we?
I mean, if we're talking about war crimes, you can talk about Vietnam as the American like war crime. We supported Pol Pot, for fuck's sake.
Learned from the Ukrainians.
Probably for me, it's using drones to spot targets. So, as an example, using artillery strikes. What you generally do is fire a couple of rounds on the bearing that was given by the forward air controller, and then based where you see the splash on the ground.
I hate EVs, by the way, Bike and Cat, but you're right.
Target the enemy. Now you can just do that with a drone up in.
It's Unit 731.
In other words, there's nowhere to hide on the battlefield, but new technology could keep soldiers safer as modern methods merge with traditional warfare.
So now we can look very deep with unmanned sensors and replace.
I've never been in favor of like drone warfare, but I have been in favor of Ukraine using whatever they have to fight back. Like, that's the thing, right? These should be internationally recognized as illegal, but at the same time, white phosphorus on civilians is illegal. We watched Israel do it. Cluster munitions are illegal. We do it, so does like Russia. Like, it doesn't matter whether it's illegal or not anymore. I'm in favor of every drone in the world getting EMP'd. Same. Can we just EMP the world? I want the internet gone. We need to bring us back to like agrarian times and try again. We fucked it.
Place tasks that human soldiers used to have to conduct with a lot of unmanned sensors, electromagnetic warfare.
Path Test, are you playing Civ?
Including new, lighter, and more compact communication systems that are allowing soldiers to use vehicles that are smaller, more agile.
You want to know what's actually fucked? Here, this is fucked. These are AI drones being taught to navigate. Algorithmatocracy destroyed us, I agree. These drones use onboard sensors which they process and share with the swarm. You can, but then I'll hate you. I'm very anti-robot. They call me Robot Hitler for a reason. Multi-drone tracking with targeting occlusion. Understand, like, this is where we're going. And yes, algorithmatocracy is a good word. It's just a hard word. Now, are you okay with autonomous AI-powered drones with targeting systems flying around? Tiny little ones, in fact. Remember, these tiny little ones can also be suicide drones. Wait, this is how the Chinese people show this cool-ass drone shows? IT apart from some cool-ass software, not individual pros. This is something the US is also developing. It's not just China. This is just like the first video that I found on it, but... Hold on. US AI drone swarms. There's a lot of stuff from China lately. Jesus Christ, these are horrifying. Look, whatever, you get the picture. I have it in my sources somewhere in my living source document. If you want to go have a look at it, it's in the description of the video below. This is concerning with companies like Google dropping their pledges not to use AI in weapon systems. Yeah, that's the point, Embrow. The whole point is to add weapons to AI, or sorry, add AI to weapon systems. Try this timestamp 1 minute. Thank you. Zach, you are absolutely based.
Actually scares me.
Yeah, go for it.
AIP leverages large language models to allow operators to quickly ask questions. Show me more details. They ask what enemy units are in the region and leverage AI to build out a likely unit formation.
Peter Thiel's usually secretive Palantir is the only AI company that actually looks like it is actively trying to kill us. They have just released this footage where you can use natural language to command a drone army.
That's fucking
AI
terrifying,
surfaces
guys.
the option to deploy a nearby drone to collect video. Task the MQ-9 to capture video of this location.
This chatbot can give you
Didn't Elon's brain implant kill like 9 monkeys? This is why you need to teach like social sciences to people when they go tech. That's one of the things that I hate about like people who go into the tech industry is that they don't learn anything about morals or ethics. You should be required, even if you're in the STEM field, even if you're in tech or IT, to take like a philosophy, ethics class, a logic class. You need a sociology or psychology class. Like you need these things because these people don't act like people otherwise. We don't just pass up an opportunity to kill people more impersonally and efficiently. Of course, you know. Imagine going all in on brain implants when AI read exterior brainwaves just as good. They're just throwing shit at the wall to see what sticks. The entire point is to make money.
For an attack, and then hold your hand through its organized kill campaign.
Well, that too, Zach. And you know what? Speaking of the root problem, let's actually get to that. So, I'm gonna watch a couple things. But first off, let's listen to what Chomsky considers is manufacturing consent. I feel like this might be important here.
You write in Manufacturing Consent that it's the primary function of the mass media in the United States to mobilize public support for the special interests that dominate the government and the private sector. What are those interests?
Well, if you want to understand the way any society works, ours or any other, the first place to look is who is in a position to make the decisions that determine the way the society functions. Societies differ, but in ours, the major decisions over what happens in the society, decisions over investment and production and distribution and so on, are in the hands of a relatively concentrated network of major corporations and
been this way for a long time.
And so on. They are also the ones who staff the major executive positions in the government, and they're the ones who own the media, and they're the ones who have to be in a position to make the decisions. They have an overwhelmingly dominant role in the way life happens, what's done in the society. Within the economic system, by law and in principle, they dominate. The control over resources and the need to satisfy their interests imposes very sharp constraints on the political system and
this is the system that's been in place for decades. This is what has built us to this point. The manufacturing of consent by the media, which again is for-profit corporations working for and with other for-profit corporations against you, against me, against us, all of us.
System.
We all do, Captain Buggy.
Talk about manufacturing of consent. Whose consent is being manufactured?
We can, to start with, there are two different groups. We can get into more detail, but at the
thank you. I'll put that up.
First level of approximation, there's two targets for propaganda. One is what's sometimes called the political class.
Thanks, Biking Cat.
There's maybe 20% of the population, which is relatively educated, more or less articulate. They play some kind of role in decision-making. They're supposed to sort of participate in social life, either as managers or cultural managers, like, say, teachers and writers and so on. They're supposed to vote. They're supposed to play some role in the way economic and political...
How much influence do you have over the economic and cultural life on your own? Not much. You need to coalesce. The reason that we don't have much is because of the individualism that has been created by American society, focusing so much on ourselves. Our house is our castle. Everyone outside of it might be an enemy. You need a gun to protect yourself in your house, which you do now. We have made it ourselves distinctly separate from the entire community. And because of this, it's much easier to manufacture consent through the media because back in the day, you used to have a belief that you would then discuss with other people in your community. They might have differing beliefs. You would critically analyze them and come to a conclusion of either agreement or disagreement. Now, you are told what to think, and you think what you are told because you don't have other people in your vicinity that you are engaging with in a productive way in regards to politics, culture, social, economics. None of that shit is discussed. We created a culture that is not only okay with, but prefers oh, I don't care about politics. That's boring, or that's too sad, or that's too hard. Like, we have created that system. Through this system, the manufacturing of consent is what they were doing to bring about this system. Serve the people, Mao Zedong. Maoists will point out how threatening this quote is to capitalist interests in Western society, hyper-individualism in a spooker way. Like, it is true. Like, I'm not saying we need to drop individualism entirely. Of course not. But we need to move closer to community. One extreme or the other is not good. You need a middle ground here. I am into politics, just not for me, I guess, yeah. Too stressful, it's the most annoying. Yeah, literally, fuck you, you're making it worse.
And cultural life goes on. Now, their consent is crucial. It's one group that has to be deeply indoctrinated. Then there's maybe 80% of the population whose main function is to follow orders and not to think, you know.
Does that sound like something to you? Remember? One group that is...
And cultural life goes on. Now, their consent is crucial. One group that has to be deeply indoctrinated.
The one deeply indoctrinated group.
Then there's maybe 80% of the population.
It's about 70 for us.
Whose main function is to follow orders and not to think, you know, and not to pay attention to anything.
And that's where we are.
Usually pay the costs.
It's 70% to like 30, and that's the same scenario from this 9-year-old video.
All right, Professor Chomsky, no. You outlined a model with filters that propaganda is sent through. That's way to the public. Can you briefly outline those?
It's basically an institutional analysis of the major media, what we call a propaganda model. We're talking primarily about the national media, those media that sort of set a general agenda that others more or less adhere to the extent that they even pay much attention to national or international affairs.
Like, this is a repost,
now,
obviously.
The elite media are the sort of the agenda-setting media. That means the New York Times, the Washington Post, the major television channels, and so on. They set the general framework. Local media more or less adapt to their structure.
Exactly true, Lord Fluffy Art.
World News. Begins to sound like it says that there's a beachhead. I think 628 is a good.
Oh, by the way, I should show this because we're getting too far. And this is the drone swarm.
Facial recognition. Inside here.
This is 20 seconds.
Is 3 grams of shaped explosive. This is how it works.
We're making that. You can ignore politics, but politics can't ignore you. Yeah, we're making that. So, like, we've gone beyond.
Yeah, but I think 6 is a good start. This is the operative soundbite for us. He's out. He really knows how to time it.
Yeah, that's fucking terrifying.
I love this soundbite. Okay,
and they do this in all sorts of ways. By selection of topics, by distribution of concerns, by emphasis and framing of issues, by filtering of information, by bounding of debate within certain limits.
2.5 minutes to air. 45 seconds.
The 90 million who didn't vote are the people who are politically, like, uneducated. They don't care. They don't want to listen. They don't pay attention. They just want to go on with their lives. They want to go to work. They want to hang out with their friends. They want to buy their, Temu bull crap, and then they want to sleep. Like, they want to watch TV and consume. They're the consumers. They're not interested in politics, which is the issue.
They determine, they select, they shape, they control, they restrict in order to serve the interests of dominant elite groups in society.
There is an unusual amount of attention focused today on the 5 nations of Central America.
This is Democracy's Diary. Here for our instruction are triumphs and disasters. The pattern.
Well, I mean, you're not wrong, Zach, but like even more so.
Here is great journalism, a revelation of the past, a guide to the present, and a clue to the future.
Fair, Lord Fluffy Art.
The New York Times is certainly
although your dad could absolutely benefit from listening to Chomsky.
Important newspaper in the United States, and one could argue the most important newspaper in the world. The New York Times plays an enormous role in shaping the perception of the current world on the part of the politically active, educated classes. Also, the New York Times has a special role, and I believe its editors probably feel that they bear a heavy burden in the sense that the New York Times creates history.
What happened years ago may have a bearing on what happens tomorrow. Millions of clippings are preserved in the Times Library, all indexed for instant use, a priceless archive of events and the men who make them.
That is, history is what appears in the New York Times archives. The place where people will go to find out what happened is the New York Times. Therefore, it's extremely important.
The system of alienation produces people alienated from the rest and perceived economic and political agency. That's the point. That's the end goal.
History is going to be shaped in an appropriate way, that certain things appear, certain things not appear, certain questions be asked, other questions be ignored, and that issues be framed in a particular fashion. Now, in whose interests is the history being so shaped? Well, I think that's not very difficult to answer. Now, to eliminate confusion, all of this has nothing to do with liberal or conservative bias. According to the propaganda model, both liberal and conservative wings of the media, whatever those terms are supposed to mean, fall within the same framework of assumptions. In fact, if the system functions well, it ought to have a liberal bias, or at least appear to, because if it appears to have a liberal bias, that will serve to bound thought even more effectively. In other words, if the press is indeed adversarial and liberal and all these bad things, then how can I go beyond it? They're already so extreme in their opposition to power that to go beyond it would be to take off from the planet. So,
that's how they frame the left as extremists, by the way.
So therefore it must...
You know, like right now, how about the left is what caused Kamala to lose because everyone was mad about Gaza? How about back in 2016? Well, Hillary Clinton lost because of Bernie bros. That's the point there.
Be that the presuppositions that are accepted in the liberal media are sacrosanct, can't go beyond them. And a well-functioning system would in fact have a bias of that kind. The media would then serve to say, in effect, thus far and no further. We ask, what would you expect of those media on just relatively uncontroversial, guided free market assumptions? And when you look at them, you find a number of major factors entering into determining...
Your dad has good taste.
...products are. These are what we call the filters. So one
of
them,
Captain
for example,
Buggy.
is ownership. Who owns them? The major agenda-setting media, after all, what are they? As institutions in the society, what are they? Well, in the first place, they are major corporations, in fact, huge corporations. Furthermore, they're integrated with and sometimes owned by even larger corporations, conglomerates. So, for example, by Westinghouse and GE and so on.
What I wanted to know was how...
Okay, no worries. We're gonna talk about Reagan because we're gonna watch this as soon as this is done. A Marxist analysis of 20th century U.S. capitalism. Because I feel like that might actually help a lot of people understand and conceptualize what's going on here. But you can definitely watch it later. By the way, thank you to Zach for sending me that video.
The elites control the media? What I mean is, I guess...
It's like asking, how do the elites control General Motors? Well, why isn't that a question? I mean, General Motors is an institution of the elites. They don't have to control it. They own it.
I mean, I'm not a commie, but close enough.
So what we have in the first place is major corporations, which are parts of even bigger conglomerates. Now, like any other corporation, they have a product which they sell to a market. The market is advertisers, that is, other businesses. What keeps the media functioning is not the audience. They make money from their advertisers.
And they make the money from the advertisers from their audience, but they don't need to increase their audience size. They just need to maintain what they have.
Remember, we're talking about the elite media, so they're trying to sell a good product, a product which raises advertising rates. And ask your friends in the advertising industry, that means that they want to adjust their audience to the more elite and affluent audience. That raises advertising rates. So what you have is institutions, corporations, big corporations, that are selling relatively privileged audiences to other businesses. Well, what point of view would you expect to come out of this? I mean, without any further assumptions, what you'd predict is that what comes out is a picture of the world, a perception of the world, that satisfies the needs and the interests and the perceptions of the sellers, the buyers, and the product.
You should watch this if you haven't,
Captain Buggy.
Captain
There are many other factors that press in the same direction. If people try to enter the system who don't have that point of view, they're likely to be excluded somewhere along the way. After all, no institution is going to happily design a mechanism to self-destruct. It's not the way institutions function. So they all
like understand, right? All of this is intentional. The CNN, NBC, AP bending the knee, but also trying to not really, like, all of this is still in favor of perpetuating the current system. All right, let's learn a bit. A Marxist analysis of 20th century capitalism.
This video was made possible with the help and generous support of my patrons. If you would like to join them in helping grow this channel, you can do so.
Look, Zizek is good. He just, like, he talks weird, alright?
The links in the description below. This is a chart from the Bureau of Labor Statistics that's measuring two different trends. The orange line represents productivity, or total value of goods and services.
This graph right here is what Democrats should be carrying around every day. If they worked for you, this graph would be just in, like, they would have a cutout of this that they just carried around every day and just put it up all the time in front of all of the cameras, in every congressional hearing, in every vote. This graph right here, this photo, is what they should be showing everybody.
It's produced by U.S.
constantly.
industry. While the red line over here represents worker compensation, or the total value of wages received by workers in those industries. The purpose of showing these two trends side by side is to take note of the relationship between them. We can see that from 1945 to approximately 1970, the growth between total value output and wages remained constant. As workers produced more value output, they received a proportionate increase in compensation. However, we can also see at the beginning...
They have robbed us and are continuing to rob us. They want this graph to go boom, up even further, off the charts, and this to go down. That's what they want. They want to rob you even more now.
In the 1970s, this trend came to a gradual halt as wages began to stagnate. This trend continued
of course,
for
it's the
50
70s.
Years, and today, in 2023, wages remain at the levels they were at in the 1970s.
Imagine that. Imagine that. The fact that you are making the same wage as someone was in 1970. 50 fucking years ago.
As the total value output of the productive sector continued to increase, stagnating wages spelled higher profits for corporations. Today,
understand, by the way, like, productivity is a factor here, but the value of commodities, because obviously this is like commodity production is being done through this red line, and then this orange line is the exchange of commodities. The worth and value, sorry, the value, not the worth, the value of these commodities is defined by the amount of labor put into them. And so you are literally stealing the work of these workers. Their working is what creates the value for the commodity, and if you sell the commodity, but you are not reimbursing the worker accordingly, then you're just stealing from them.
Rapid inflation, poorly paid jobs, and precarious contract labor, much of the working class is discovering that their wages are insufficient to purchase the things that previous generations were easily able to afford.
That's right.
In
single family spending, sending kids to college, having multiple cars, owning a home, all that shit was normal 50 years ago.
The inflated price of groceries, housing, and energy continue to hollow out the middle class and generate waves of anger and dismay among working people. Talking heads continue to point to this or that individual phenomenon as
now remember, just to really clarify, sorry I keep pausing, but at the end of Biden's term, the economy was technically booming. Inflation was low, job numbers were up, we had very low unemployment, although you do want some unemployment, but it was within margins, like everything was perfect. However, you and me felt none of it. Why? Because wages. Everything was perfect for the rich. Wages are what was missing for you, for me. The simple shorthand way to explain LTA is that no employer would employ you if they weren't paying you less than you contribute to them. Yes, but like, how much less, right? How much less? And like, beyond that, employers don't do any work. They don't create any value.
COVID, banking deregulation, the war in Ukraine, anything China does, and so on. But to grasp the historic roots of the current crisis, it is crucial to understand what this chart is saying, where we were, where we are now, and how we got here.
Certain economic truths have become accepted as self-evident. A second Bill of Rights, under which a new basis of security and prosperity can be established for all.
In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
This is the guy that started all our problems. That guy. He started all of this.
Problem. Government.
Well, at least, you know, the worsening of it all.
10 wealthiest men doubled their fortunes during the first 2 years of the pandemic as poverty and inequality soared.
Again, 10 wealthiest men doubled their fortunes during the pandemic. This is like, the French Revolution was not this bad with economic disparity. I dropped a video in your media share presenting reimaging political spectrum based on human psychology. I DM'd you a video called The Endless Hells of YouTube Tutorials. Thank you for both of those. And honestly, that like political spectrum based on human psychology sounds incredibly interesting, because I think that one of the main issues that we have with political analysis is that we don't analyze things from a psychological and sociological perspective. Didn't Elon and the top 10 billionaires do more than double? Oh yeah, but that was this year. Like, that was this year. During the pandemic, it was just, I guess, an average of double. From the New Deal to neoliberalism.
The early 20th century was
Thank you for coming to my in-person lecture. Today I'm
sorry.
Capital accumulation was
my bad. Average of double, holy fuck that statement. Yeah.
It's a turbulent period in the history of the capitalist mode of production. As capital accumulation continued to expand, it eventually grew beyond the confines of the nation.
You're not wrong.
Capital had become global, and the antagonistic relations it gives rise to
it's just not like, it's just a manufactured one.
Became global. This fact was not only realized in World War I, but also with the Great Depression beginning in 1929. Both of these crises, only 1 decade apart, each emerged at the global level as an expression of underlying economic processes that continued to push outward. The Great Depression came as a sudden shock, wreaking incalculable destruction on the lives of working-class people. From 1929 to the peak of the Depression, global GDP dropped by 15%, international trade fell by 50%, and unemployment reached up to 30% in Western countries. The US,
this might be where we're headed, guys.
Where the Great Depression was sparked, rural farming communities were hit the hardest. The price of crops dropped so dramatically that roughly 10% of rural farmers could no longer pay their debts and were forced to sell their land. It took roughly a decade before the rural crisis was resolved and the agricultural sector was restructured. The economic orthodoxy during the time of the Great Depression was based on laissez-faire or let-be theory. The Austrian School of Economics, who spearheaded
laissez-faire economics, is just let the capitalist class have whatever they want, and you poors can just die. That's what laissez-faire economics is.
This theory had always argued that capitalism did not produce general economic crises, but only isolated temporary downturns in particular industries. They argued that if governments let the market be, economic activity would eventually re-stimulate an equilibrium between supply and demand. From here, they argued that any form of state intervention to artificially generate recovery would only further disrupt the market and prolong the crisis.
Again, if you look at this graph,
the
point of it,
economic activity would eventually re-stimulate an equilibrium between supply and demand.
The economic equilibrium that is being re-stimulated is a transfer of wealth to the upper class from the bottom. That's what it is. It is, well, things will get back to normal and the poors will actually be able to work again once you have taken the wealth and put it back into the system. It is stealing from you. That's what the whole point is. Supply and demand economics doesn't work without intervention. If you care about, I don't know, poor people. If you don't care about poor people at all, then sure. But, you know, be a human being. That might help. Lenin would be so pissed right now. I'm sure.
From here,
you talking about the mod or like Lenin?
To artificially generate recovery would only further disrupt the market and prolong the crisis. The recommendation of the Austrian school to let the market be, in practice, translated to doing nothing and letting the suffering of the working class play out.
Built
Western
on
governments
that.
were generally dissatisfied with the Austrian school's diagnosis and solution to the crisis. Millions of unemployed people were piling into soup kitchens, homelessness flooded the countryside, industry.
Captain Buggy, I like Lenin's theory before he took power. I like the things that he wrote. He actually sounds like a libertarian socialist the way I do. It's just when he took power, he was corrupted because they never removed capital as a concept, and also Trotsky. But capital corrupts you. The existence of capital begs the existence of a capital class. I say this all the time.
Couldn't sell their products, and in the background of all of this, the Soviet Union was urging workers of the world to overthrow their governments and implement a socialist worker state. The Soviets were calling on the international proletariat to follow their lead in transcending the capitalist mode of production and building a future world that did not depend on the madness of capital accumulation.
They could have gone so well if Trotsky didn't exist, and if they didn't kill all of the anarchists.
Perpetual economic
and they got rid of
or
capital.
The barbarism of exploitation. The
Exactly,
Soviet Union
Oxpecker.
faced many difficulties, and it was not immune from the consequences of the Great Depression.
Now, Stalin was a
However,
fascist,
the Soviets
but
successfully overcame many challenges that crippled Western capitalist societies. For example, as unemployment reached up to 30% in the West, the USSR maintained an employment rate of virtually 100%.
yes, but they also employed people for jobs that didn't need to be there, were really, like, their entire organization and bureaucratic structure was dog shit, which is a product of them being incompetent.
Unlike the Austrian School of Economics, which never took Marxism or Soviet communism as a serious alternative to capitalism, other segments of the bourgeoisie certainly perceived it as a threat. What would happen, they wondered, if millions of unemployed Western workers began to occupy their spare time learning about the 100% employment rate under Soviet communism?
What would happen if Western workers spent their time learning about how capitalism is stealing from them and is ruining their lives, and how, you know, you can do better? Not to say that the Soviet Union is better. We don't want to be the Soviet Union, but they had some decent ideas that we could maybe take a bit from, maybe consider some nuanced analysis. Do you think socialist governments fail just because they are cooed and steered into fascist shit? Sorry, I missed a bit. No, see, I think that socialist governments fail because they don't get rid of capital. All of the, like, we have governments in the world right now that are Marxist-Leninist communism, except they're not communist because they still have a market. The capital is what corrupts the intentions of the country, of the people, of the wealthy. But also, I don't really agree with Marxist-Leninism at all, because I don't think that true socialism can exist with a top-down structure. I don't think you can be a socialist country, not a real one, while having one person or a group of people leading the country. The country should be led by the people, not with a leader. A top-down structure is anti-socialist.
Two individuals within the bourgeois class.
But also, yes, socialist governments also fail because capitalism is the global capitalism is the global mode of production. No matter how much protectionism you do, it's not going to prevent neoliberalism or imperialism. We need to meet in the middle. Don't give all our money to billionaires. Don't give all our money to the government. Exactly. How about the government takes all of the billionaires' money and then gives them to everyone else instead? How about we do that, right?
Worked to
bottom
prevent this
up,
from happening
exactly.
Were the U.S. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt and the British economist John Maynard Keynes.
Remember, we talked about how the wealthy tried to do a fascist coup on FDR. No, FDR wasn't perfect, but like even the liberal version of let's give a shit about poor people was too much for them. Still is, actually.
Franklin Delano Roosevelt, or FDR, was elected U.S. president in 1932 on the promise of offering a New Deal to the American working class. American socialist and communist parties were already growing, and the economic crisis was pushing greater numbers into their ranks. FDR understood that without some type of economic relief, the working class would continue to be attracted to the socialist alternative.
Now, just to remember the context in which FDR came about, this was immediately following the Great Depression. There were people living in camps in places like Central Park, little homeless cities called Hoovervilles outside of major cities everywhere. Many, many, many people lost their jobs, lost their homes, lost their families, lost their lives. People were pissed. That's what happened before. And what happens when the general public is economically, they're material conditions that they existed have drastically decreased in a short amount of time, they are much more easy to radicalize and to show the truth to point in the right direction. We are about to experience a situation, if not the same or worse, remarkably similar to this. Don't pass up the opportunity.
In order to save capitalism, FDR needed to present it to the working class as the superior alternative to socialism. FDR was largely inspired by the British economist John Maynard Keynes, who, like FDR, was a capitalist that wanted to save capitalism from itself. Keynes opposed the laissez-faire approach of his Austrian colleagues, who took a supply-side approach to economic questions, by arguing their position from the perspective of sellers.
You're not wrong,
or
Oxpecker.
capitalists. Keynes, however, advocated for a mode of economic governance that held greater concern for the purchasing power of workers as a means of keeping the cycle of production and consumption in motion. Keynes understood
Liberal
the necessity
economics.
of supply-side economics, but also pointed out the dependency that supply has on demand. He argued that without a growing demand for consumer goods, supply would eventually seize up and the economy would re-enter a crisis.
Again, still a very small mention of labor here, but labor only exists in this context as a buying force, not just the production.
Keynes's theory was significant because it was an expression of the bourgeois class coming to terms with
The
the fact that
bourgeois.
capitalism had created a general crisis, a crisis of a magnitude that required a dramatic restructuring of the economy. FDR applied Keynes's ideas and similar ideas into policies that were highly favorable to the working class. In 1933, a series of laws were passed by Congress and a number of executive orders signed by FDR to institute the New Deal, a sweeping set of programs and agencies to facilitate relief, recovery, and reform.
Now, the New Deal was
immediately
good, but
introduced
like
a number of reforms that directly improved the economic
a
conditions.
lot of the stuff from the New Deal was also undone very shortly after. Pre-breakfast banana, we're in a strange point in time where companies can lay off all their workers and hire robots. They don't need us anymore. Yeah, that's the other thing, is that your jobs are being taken by AI and robots now. They don't care about you at all. Now is the time to make it known that your labor is what they need. If you don't give them your labor or your money, they can't make the robots, they can't make the AI, they can't run their business. Any ML I know isn't shy about being associated with authoritarianism. Some of them are.
Of the working class. Unemployment insurance, payments, and benefits were widely distributed to millions of jobless workers, and in 1935, the Social Security Administration further expanded similar benefits related to old age retirement, disability, and maternity leave. The New Deal also introduced a number of large public programs that put millions of Americans to work in building a sturdy economic foundation to avoid future crises. The Civilian Conservation Corps was introduced as a federal agency that took on the responsibility of planning the conservation and development of federal land and resources. These were jobs that were provided to unemployed, unmarried men, as well as 15,000 indigenous people employed to aid in the conservation strategies. The agency reached its peak with an enrollment of 300.
They're confident enough in life extension to start the forced population reduction. Well, I mean, I'm confused about that because some of them probably do want population reduction, but they also talk about like how much we need to raise birth rates. But I mean, there are factions in the right, so
300,000 workers. The Works Progress Administration introduced sweeping infrastructure projects which employed millions of workers who laid hundreds of thousands of kilometers of road, built over 10,000 bridges, many airports, and much housing.
Look how much nicer things are when you work for the workers, when the government is trying to, I don't know, pay attention to the laboring force, the working class.
$0.9 billion.
That makes sense, yeah. Just white people.
6.7% of US GDP in 1935. The Works Progress Administration also introduced the Federal Project No. 1, which established a series of cultural programs ranging from the Federal Art Project, Federal Music Project, Federal Theater Project, Federal Writers Project, and the Historical Records Survey.
Thanks, Zach. Have a lovely night.
The overriding
pre-breakfast banana. You might find that most hippie communes are right-leaning.
Of the New Deal was to provide employment and income to millions of unemployed and unskilled workers. The jobs provided by these new agencies did not always pay well, but the wages were sufficient to stimulate an overall economic recovery among the US workforce. However, for the working class, these agencies represented much more than mere job programs. The infrastructure projects introduced by the Works Progress Administration built much of the foundation that helped elevate the standard of living of the US workforce. Housing was filled with low-income workers, highways were laid for the emerging automobile industry,
and you can see here that again, even in the case of the government putting in place policies that are meant to support the working class, the end goal is still to support the rich, the billionaire class, the bourgeoisie, as they're calling it in this video. Which is like, it's correct. I just don't like to use it because the word hits the woke filter. But the end goal is still the service of the billionaire class, the wealthy, the capital class. And that's the point. Liberalism, neoliberalism, even when acting in a positive way, is still not acting in our best interest at all. They may seem like it every now and again. For example, the infrastructure bill that Biden put in place, the CHIPS Act, which was supposed to protect American chip manufacturing in Taiwan, bring it over to the United States, protect it from China. The end goal of all of these bills, which were good and did help the US, was to help the capital class more so than anyone else. It was the protectionist policies were protecting their industry. The infrastructure, okay, that is something we all enjoy, but it's also something businesses use regularly. The liberal economy will always work for the business class before the working class. I mean, even Adam Smith was a scumbag ultimately, despite him probably functionally being a sock dem in our current US system. Yeah.
The rising standard of US living. Furthermore, Federal Project Number 1 even demonstrated an effort to democratize cultural products by building capacity for theater, art, and musical productions among the working class. The New Deal reforms also took aim at restructuring labor rights and the overall meaning of US citizenship, not only by expanding the rights of ethnic minorities, including indigenous peoples, albeit marginally, but also by guaranteeing an expanded domain of rights to the working class in general. In 1935, the FDR administration introduced policies that greatly strengthened the power of labor unions to negotiate a fair agreement with their employers. The Congress of Industrial Organization, CIO, was introduced as a means of organizing and mobilizing labor under the purview of the state.
The scary part about workers being replaced with automation, no alternative source of income, is the same thing about climate change being visibly real to the ruling class. They see the problem, but don't seem too worried about it, almost like they know something is going to take care of that issue for them. Well, I mean, yeah. And also, like, a lot of them are also pretty stupid. They have, like, bunkers and shit. They think they can survive. But at the same time, like, they're not worried about that. They either have a plan for it, or they think they could survive it. FDR's reforms were essential to the survival of American capitalism. This is true. Now, were they good for the working class? Absolutely. But it was, in the end, in the service of American capitalism. Wait, this guy brings up the CIO. What is this video? Who made this? It's called a Marxist Analysis of the 20th Century Capitalism. Here, I'll link it for you. About 95, Rush Limbaugh said that 50 million is easily liquidated assets was the bar for independent upper class. My guess today is $100 million in today's money. Probably, yeah. If you have under $1 billion, you still have to follow the law. But if you have more than $1 billion, the law doesn't apply to you. We saw when people lost their homes and banks got bailed out, where the priorities were if they bailed out people, the banks would get their money. Instead, the people lost everything and the banks got a handout. Yeah, that was just 2008. That was Obama.
Agreement with their employers. The Congress of Industrial Organization, CIO, was introduced as a means of organizing and mobilizing labor under the purview of the state. Shortly after its establishment, the largest labor action in American history was sparked in Flint, Michigan, where auto workers demonstrated by laying down their tools in a sit-down strike. This strike quickly spread to other auto plants.
Oh, I know, but like liberalism has laissez-faire. We've moved past laissez-faire into neoliberalism, in which like we were using bits of Keynesian economics, right? We were, but now like we've gone so far beyond.
And eventually, 100,000
I'm glad Biking Cat. Join the Discord.
Across the country. As the situation escalated, workers became involved in violent clashes with police, with 14 injured. The Vice President, John Vance Garner, supported the idea of bringing in federal troops to break up the strike, But FDR rejected his proposal and instead urged capitalists in the auto industry to recognize the legitimacy of the United Auto Workers Union.
Based, right?
With this support
This
from
stuff
FDR,
is good. Like, FDR's reforms were good, but again, they service capitalism in the end over us. They used the working class as a tool to service capitalism. This is a Marxist analysis of 20th century capitalism in the US.
The strike was a great success, and the United Auto Workers registered over 100,000 members to their union in the aftermath. The widespread establishment of labor unions was a tremendous advancement in the power of industrial workers to negotiate collective bargaining agreements and raise issues with their employers, including safety, wages, time off, and other newly established worker rights.
All of these things didn't exist before the Great Depression. We only got these under FDR. Your weekends, your like 9 to 5, your time off, all of that stuff was part of the New Deal. It was things that we had to fight for. The working class fought for this shit. FDR didn't just get the idea and suddenly do it. There were thousands of protests under Hoover. There were literal fights breaking out, union leaders being killed by the police on the street. That's what preceded all of this. Understand? Like, we were this close to socialism as a revolution was rising in America. FDR came in place and did some of the things that these protesters wanted, and it perpetuated the existence of capitalism instead of allowing them to have a revolution. It was controlled opposition. Now, was it good overall? FDR did a lot of good for the country. I don't know how it would have turned out otherwise, but he did placate revolutionary fervor by improving material conditions for a large white portion of the working class. Well said, Embrow. Captain Buggy, also, thank you for mentioning it's still capitalism. Unions and shit don't actually go far enough. It's improvements due to antagonism. Eventually, capitalism is going to die. True.
FDR's vision for the future of the US even went beyond what he was able to achieve with his New Deal. During World War II, the US had become so extraordinarily wealthy that FDR, along with many others, believed that the progress and status of the US worker would only continue to rise in the years and decades to come. By the early 1940s, he even went so far as to publicly propose the idea of a second Bill of Rights.
Certain economic truths have become accepted as self-evident. A second Bill of Rights, under which a new basis of security and prosperity can be established for all, regardless of station or race or creed. Among these are the right to a useful and remunerative job, the right to earn enough to provide adequate food and clothing and recreation.
Now again, good, but also placates the idea of let's move past the system of capitalism.
The right of every farmer.
Oh, of course, pre-breakfast banana.
Raise and sell his products at a return which will give him and his family a decent living. The right of every businessman, large and small.
And don't get me wrong, by the way, like, I like FDR. I named my cat Franklin Delano Roosevelt, right? But, I mean, this is controlled opposition. Roosevelt was fully aware. In fact, we covered this in the business plot video. Once Roosevelt was made aware that the capital class in the United States tried to install a fascist dictator through use of a coup, he did nothing. Did he arrest these people? We know who they were. Did he do anything about them? Did he go after the people at JP Morgan? Did he go after the people at DuPont or Remington Arms? No. He said, oh, well, okay. That was it. That was it. That was it. We had congressional hearings. We had decorated veterans telling the story, having evidence, proving it. There was proof that all of this was real. They just couldn't say, okay, well, this person specifically said that. That was as far as we got. Do you think that, like, any president that wasn't in the service of capital would have allowed that to continue? These people just tried to do a coup on you because you were too pro-labor and not pro-business enough when you're absolutely still pro-business.
Atmosphere of freedom, freedom from unfair competition and domination by monopolies at home or abroad. The right of every family to a decent home. The right to adequate medical care and the opportunity to achieve and enjoy good health. The right.
I love how it's the opportunity.
adequate protection from the economic fears of old age, sickness.
It does sound great.
Accident, and unemployment.
This is all good stuff.
The right to a good education. All of these rights spell security.
But all of these rights could exist without capitalism, but they are still being framed and formed in a way that supports capitalism. It was the anarchists that fought for the 8-hour workday in Chicago general strike in 1886, leading to the May 1st International Workers' Day. Literally, like that's what I'm trying to say. We had people striking, fighting, dying for labor, and all of that was going to continue. But FDR came in place and he appeased the masses with these objectively good decisions and bills and policies. Like, it's not like these are bad, but it placates the revolutionaries. It placates the working class into shutting up and then allowing the system to continue as is. It's all within a capitalist system, ultimately leading to billionaires and government controlled by capitalists. That's true, Captain Buggy. What we have now, today, is the final form of what we had here. It has been corrupted through misinformation and war and all of these different technological aspects that we've brought into, but the base of it is still capitalism. It's just capitalism every time.
And after this war is won, we must be prepared to
move
forward in the implementation of these rights to new goals of human happiness and well-being.
They're selling duck eggs because all of the other egg-laying birds are dead from bird flu. Free Luigi, yeah. But, like, definitely not the place to organize for revolutions, I will say. Get me banned from Twitch, why don't you?
A bold set of guarantees that would greatly enhance the material condition of the working class. However, in order to pay for these reforms, which placed a heavy strain on the budget of the bourgeois state, FDR introduced a heavy tax on corporations, which reached as high as 94% for the largest income earners.
Incredibly based.
Unsurprisingly, there were many within the bourgeois class who despised FDR. In fact, shortly after FDR's election, a small number of industrialists and financiers from large enterprises such as DuPont and Chase Manhattan Bank even plotted
and Remington Arms
a fascist coup to have him overthrown and replaced by a military general.
Check out my video on YouTube for this one.
Never materialized, but ruling class efforts to reverse FDR's expansive reforms would continue to persist for decades to come.
Now we move on to
Unlike the developed industrial economies of Europe and Japan, the US had entirely avoided the destruction of World War II being brought onto its own soil. Throughout the war, as Europe destroyed its industrial capacity, American productivity only continued to grow, and by the end of the war, it not only had all of its
absolutely, that was incredibly based, Embrow, and we should have that now. Honestly, I would be in favor of taxing corporations at 98%, 99%, and the effective tax rate being somewhere around 75, 80.
Intact, but was by far the most prosperous nation in the world.
But you'd have to increase wages.
This unique set of circumstances provided the historic opportunity for the US to step forward as the global hegemon, at least over the capitalist West. World War II erupted as a conflict between imperialist powers such as the US, Great Britain, Nazi Germany, and Japan, seeking to broaden their influence over the colonial world. In order to prevent such conflict from reoccurring between major capitalist powers, the US saw it necessary to exercise unilateral hegemonic control over global economic affairs. It enforced this hegemony through US proxy institutions that were established at the global level in 1948, such as the World Bank, International Monetary Fund, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, which later became the World Trade Organization. These institutions were introduced under a set of global rules and regulations known as the Bretton Woods monetary system. The system was planned and implemented through the Bretton Woods Conference, which brought delegates together from across the world to sign on to the agreement. Everyone generally recognized the gravity of the agreement in handing over near total control to the US in planning of the world economy.
Literally beginning of the end. This was the level up from capitalism. From pre-FDR capitalism, having a little bit of a stall during FDR, and then here they just level up to the next. What's up, Sister Doll?
John
that's
Maynard
fine. You
Keynes
didn't
was
miss
the
all that
British
much.
delegate to the negotiations and underwent severe stress in guaranteeing Britain a secure position in the future global order no longer under its control. Meanwhile, Soviet delegates also felt extreme pressure coming from the US. 27 million Soviets died in World War II. It single-handedly defeated the Nazi attack on the Eastern Front and secured all of Eastern Europe under its control. But despite all of this, the Bretton Woods system treated the Soviets no different from Germany or Japan. The Soviet
I wonder if there was a reason for that.
Government refused to sign on to the agreement to participate in the system and condemned the conference that organized it as a branch of Wall Street. This marked, in many ways, the end of the World War II alliance and the beginning of the Cold War.
That's true, Captain Buggy.
The global reforms introduced by the Bretton Woods monetary system.
I mean, look, we took out the Japanese, who are arguably scarier and were, like, the Japanese during World War II were much more capable and scarier than the Nazis were on a world level. Viking Cat, please never go on Rumble. Rumble is like, it's just Nazis and pedophiles from my experience.
Had the effect of restructuring circuits of capital within the Western world, particularly between Europe and the US. The American ruling
Plus, it's owned by crypto grifters like Peter Thiel.
Class understood that without an export market for the large magnitude of commodities it was now producing, it would quickly face the problem of overproduction, underconsumption, and eventually fall back into a crisis. Therefore, the European Economic Recovery Plan, or the Marshall Plan, provided much of Western Europe, including the former German and Japanese enemies, tens of billions of dollars in low-interest loans to rebuild
This is the thing that we're like literally tearing up right now.
Infrastructure. In doing so, the US not only elevated itself to the status of a creditor nation, putting itself in a position of guiding the industrial development of Europe, but also established an export market to consume American goods. In the 10 years following the New Deal, the US GDP on average grew a staggering 12.5% every year, beginning at $67 billion in 1934 and reaching $224 billion in 1944.
That's insane, by the way.
The wealth generated by US unipolar hegemony would continue to fund the domestic New Deal reforms that provided the US working class a growing standard of living.
Oh my god, wait, is this going to be copyright?
Through. So too did its desire for home ownership. The New
Deal
Deal provided some relief to homeowners in the 1930s, but it was World War II that truly enriched the working class. And
what is Bitcoin? Bitcoin is a way for them to steal your money.
Sharply raised its standard of living. If we return to the graph we started with, we can see that from
again, this graph should be held up by every Democrat every time they speak. They should literally just hold it. Any platform as funny as comedian as Rob Schneider, I will keep my distance from. Jesus Christ.
1945 to 1970, the US working class standard of living continued to climb and correlated with the general growth of total wealth. In other words, as the working class contributed to the growing wealth of society, they were rewarded for their contributions with a proportionate increase in the share of total wealth. This post-war economic boom is what historians sometimes refer to as the golden age of capitalism, and is the historic context under which the concept of the American dream is born. The American dream is central to the role of securing the hegemony of the capitalist system and its legitimacy in the eyes of the working class. It not only represented the idea that material comfort was achievable through hard work and discipline, but furthermore, that the capitalist free market system was what ultimately provided the opportunity for upward mobility. Workers, if they just
all of this could exist under a non-capitalist system, by the way. In fact, easier and more available and more spread out towards everybody. This exact system that was just put forward could exist.
Work hard could achieve the American dream themselves. A home, a family, a vehicle, a white picket fence, and so on. In 1955, the median annual family income was $4,400, and the median cost of a house was approximately $9,000, and roughly 60% of US households own their home.
Like, that is a reasonable distinction, right? Now, like, especially, like, if we're talking about under a capitalist context, these are
$9,000
rational numbers.
And roughly 60% of US households own their home.
That's nowhere close to where we are now.
By 1965, the median annual family income was $7,000, the median cost of a house was $21,000, and roughly 65% of US households own their own home. In other words, in 1955, the cost of a home was generally equivalent to a 2-year salary. In 1965, it was equivalent to a 3-year salary. Today, in 2023, the average cost of a house is anywhere from between 5 to 6 years worth of median income.
Right now, the average home price in the United States is $419,200. Now that is the house prices you'll get if you live in like a rural area. If you want to live anywhere near a city, doesn't matter what city, any city, you're looking at 7 figures for a house. For like a house, not like a single room apartment, like a house.
Throughout the 1950s and 60s, home ownership increased in both absolute and relative terms by the tens of millions. The economic landscape of the golden age of capitalism was the basis of a new social contract between the state and citizens. Capitalism would remain intact, but the working class would share in a larger portion of social wealth, particularly in securing a piece of land and a home of their own. This social contract worked as long as the working class kept its head down when it came to questions of foreign policy, war, imperialism, or the workings of US empire. The underlying truth to the prosperity of the US working class is that it was largely built through the exploitation of colonial labor across the world, which it constantly harassed.
It's not just that, like, they don't know, Schuffelpuffer. It's that they don't want to know. Conservatism is genuinely, like, I'm gonna get shit for this, but I really do think that modern day conservatism in the United States specifically is the product, is a mental illness that's the product of media. That's it.
Through its
And Biking Cat, if you want evidence of climate change, bring that up next stream, or like DM me on Discord. I can talk to you about that. I've gone into length about it as well.
Military. The socialist revolutions in
Base
Vietnam
public transport.
in 1945, Korea in the same year, China in 1949, or Cuba in 1959 represented efforts for the colonized nations of the world to assert their self-determination on the global stage. Each of these socialist revolutions posed threats to Western dominance by resisting imperialist exploitation, which is why the US made such violent efforts to crush them throughout the Cold War. Even the US...
Which, by the way, like, our efforts to stop socialism and communism in other countries probably also contributed to those socialist and communist countries not developing systems in which they get rid of capital. Because Vietnam, China, Cuba, all of them still had capital, which is why all of them still are failures as socialism. Sorry, like, that's, some of you might like China, some of you might like Cuba. I don't mind Cuba. Vietnam is Marxist-Leninist. China is more capitalist than we are in America by, like, a margin of their market is bigger. They sell more, like, they have just capitalism now. It's not even remotely socialist in China. But all of these things were likely products of, well, minus China. Mao is a little nutty, but we could have done better. We could have incentivized the removal of capital, right? Oh yeah, the Marxist-Leninist Maoist shining path bullshit. So basically other countries are probably doing better if we had not interfered? No, I don't know. They could have been. Like I said, the reason that socialist countries and communist countries fail is because they haven't gotten rid of capital. Like every single one of them, that is the one consistent theme.
President Dwight D. Eisenhower made a dire warning to the American people regarding the nation's growing dependence.
I don't know about that, but I think Soviet Russia might have been in a much better position if they got rid of capital and they didn't kill all of the libertarian, socialist, and anarchist allies that they had.
Dependency on the military as a branch of industry.
Our military organization today bears little relation to that known of any of my predecessors in peacetime, or indeed by the fighting men of World War II or Korea. Until the latest of our world conflicts, the United States had no armaments industry. We have been compelled to create a permanent armaments industry of vast proportions.
Now, by the way, there's a reason why our military budget is ballooned out of the point where, like, Congress doesn't know how much money that the military gets, the Pentagon gets, because we use private contractors. We have the U.S. Corps of Engineers, right? They should be making shit, but they don't. We have Boeing make shit. We have Raytheon make shit. They make the stuff. They charge us incredibly high prices for it, especially for maintenance. All of they just are making all that money. Our defense budget could probably be about a third. Think about it like AI. DeepSeek, right? The Chinese AI cost a fraction of the amount that any of American AI companies cost to make. Why? Because American AI companies waste that money on bullshit, whereas China's not doing that. Like, they steal that money. It goes into their pockets. One of my supervisors told me a bonus doesn't mean as much to someone in debt. They'll just use it to pay off the debt and not spend it on something. That's true. Like, it still means something, as in it's nice that you can help pay off the debt, but it doesn't give you that feeling of a bonus. You haven't earned anything extra. It comes off differently. But honestly, you should never be in debt anyway.
Added to this, 3.5 million men and women are directly engaged in the defense establishment. We annually spend on military security alone more than the net income of all United States corporations. Now, this
debt is how capitalists avoid taxes.
Establishment and a large
Captain Buggy, based as fuck.
Arms industry is new in the American experience. The total influence, economic, political, even spiritual, is felt in every city, every state house, every office of the federal government. We recognize the imperative need for this development, yet we must not fail to comprehend its grave implications. Our toil, resources, and livelihood are all involved. So is the very structure of our society. In the councils of government, we must...
Oh, look! Here's a military contractor being supported by the Treasury Secretary.
When we pay for their defense, that's a big nut that we carry. Now, Elon Musk says that he could find, Mr. Secretary, as much as $1 trillion in savings.
Nonsense, by the way.
Abuse that's littered.
They've still yet to find any, but still.
Government.
Go on.
That itself could bring down inflation, perhaps. Your view on
in
that?
Fantasyland.
I'm in complete alignment with Elon on this. Yeah.
Now think about that. Again, U.S. Treasury, complete alignment with Elon, who is a military contractor. He is part of the military-industrial complex.
Whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex, the potential...
Laura Ingraham cannot grow a brain.
This power exists and will persist. We must not make this combination endangering our liberties or democratic processes.
Throughout the 1950s and 1960s, the brakes were effectively applied to unrestrained laissez-faire capitalism, but as reflected in Eisenhower's warning, the power of capital was still alive and well.
That's your question answered, Toby one.
Capitalist system alive, and in doing so, maintained the class contradictions that led to economic crises. Maintaining class control over the means of production also meant that real social power, economic power, continued to reside under the control of the capitalist class. So long as the means of production remained
fuck me, we have bird flu in Australia now.
in the hands of the bourgeoisie, it would use its economic power to influence economic development and state policies, whether in the form of war, lower wages, corporate tax cuts, curtailing worker rights, or reducing social spending.
And you're right, Biking Cat, the reason that we didn't do it is because the rich just want more money in their pocket.
The New Deal did not replace the capitalist class as the producers of commodities, and therefore it remained free to control the price of goods. The state could make all efforts to promote higher wages, stronger unions, and greater social reforms, but if it simultaneously permitted capitalists to simply raise prices whenever workers received more income, then the state reforms were only temporary. The workers would gain wealth, and all the prices would rise. They would strike for higher wages, gain wealth,
no it won't.
Then prices would rise once more. Workers
Mainstream news is basically state media now.
would once strike again, gain higher wages, and so on and so on. This process finally reached the peak of absurdity in the 1970s.
Competition is the fucking issue. Yes, cooperation over competition. You can have an economic system built on cooperation that functions much better than a system built on competition. The difference being that a system built on cooperation, an economic system, does not produce a billionaire class, does not produce a capitalist class. The social relationship with labor doesn't fucking work that way. Thank you.
Spiraling inflation.
Someone just needs to read fucking Capital.
A sharp rise in prices and wages. In 1970,
Exactly. We make more money with cooperation. The billionaires don't exist because they're one of us. We have money. We have an equivalent, like we have an amount of money between you, me, Captain Buggy, Mbrow, Pre-Breakfast Banana, that is not necessarily the same, but is equivalent to the point where there is not a separate class of people being created. We are all one class of people. We are the communities. We are the country. We are the working class. But there is no capital class. There is no working poor. There is no homelessness. That is the point of cooperation. See also, the billionaires make more money by cooperating with each other. That's a great point, Sundry Clown Car. They want socialism for the rich. Do you understand that, right? We've been seeing that implemented over and over and over again. Socialism for the rich, capitalism for the poor. What happened after Brian Thompson got shot in New York, the CEO of United Healthcare? 70 CEOs got a group therapy session with the governor of New York that was paid for by the taxpayer. They got socialist healthcare. They got socialist therapy. But do you ever get any do you get anything close to that? No, of course not. They want to cut your Medicaid. They want to cut your Medicare. They want to steal your Social Security. Captain Buggy, I'm getting kicked out of my apartment for not paying rent, so maybe I'm not the best example of having money. Well, I mean, I'm sorry. That really sucks. I hope you work through that. But that's not your fault. That's the system fucking you. What on earth does therapy for a sociopath billionaire, what does therapy do for a sociopath billionaire? It makes them not cry because they're all weak as shit. That's the thing. They're sociopathic to you, but all of them are insecure, weak, fragile little children that any amount of, I don't know, any criticism of them, any backtalk, any standing up to them, especially in public, is a no-go. Having one of them shot and killed outside of his place of work in New York terrified these people, as they, realistically should be. Big government contract is our money giving to, is money going to a rich person, give us medicine for the love of God. Remember, on top of that, not only did they get socialist healthcare, but now everyone that said anything like Free Luigi is on a list part of the NYPD that they consider possible radicals. So, if you didn't immediately cry and say how bad you feel for Brian Thompson, you're potentially a terrorist, according to the NYPD. Yes, really. I covered it several times. Here, let me pull it up. We're on that list, guys. We are on that list. Anyone who said anything on social media that was remotely not sympathetic to Brian Thompson. Sorry, I have a lot of sources in this document. There we go. Based on a review of handwritten claims of responsibility and social media presence of Luigi Mangione, the suspect in the United Healthcare CEO shooting, the NYPD Intelligence Counterterrorism Bureau assesses that the alleged perpetrator was likely driven to violence on the basis of grievances against what he perceives as parasitic health insurance companies, based, and industry as a whole, as well as, well, actually based just so they call them parasitic, not for what he did. Don't get mad at me, Twitch. As well as broader objections to corporate greed and concerns for modern society. Mangione seemed to have found inspiration from Ted Kaczynski. Based on the observed online reactions to the shooting, including celebrations of the killing of a health insurance executive and encouragement of targeting leaders across industries, there is a risk that a wide range of extremists may view Mangione as a martyr and an example to follow. And then they have like a whole thing that's kind of cut off. But yeah, no, you're on a list, guys. I will throw you the link. Yeah, we've been on that list. If you throw out a free Mario, that might get past the censors.
Nixon finally implemented the Economic Stabilization Act through executive order, giving him the power to implement a 90-day price freeze on goods and wages to control price inflation.
We must protect the position of the American dollar as a pillar of monetary stability around the world. In the past 7 years, there's been an average of one international monetary crisis every year. Now, who gains from these crises? Not the working man, not the investor, not the real...
Oh, did you know, by the way, you can't FOIA request Elon Musk? Based leftist Leo, see ya, have a good time. Oh, by the way, remember, they're calling us the parasite class now. The parasite class.
Of wealth. The gainers are the international money speculators. Because they thrive on crises, they help to create them. In recent weeks, the speculators have been waging an all-out war on the American dollar. The strength of a nation's currency is based on the strength of that nation's economy. And the American economy is by far the strongest in the world. Accordingly, I have directed the Secretary of the Treasury to take the action necessary to defend the dollar against the speculators.
Good. Pre-breakfast banana, you should. Be a pest, be a Karen, be mean, be annoying, be loud.
To suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets, except in amounts and conditions determined to be in the interest of monetary stability and in the best interest of the United States.
This period of rapid price inflation unfolded within a broader crisis of U.S. hegemony at the international level. The Bretton Woods monetary system gave the US dollar supremacy by pinning it to the price of gold. This meant that as new goods entered the market, new gold needed to enter the market to maintain stable prices. In essence, there needed to be a delicate balance between the magnitude of commodities in the market, the amount of currency in the market, and the amount of gold in the market. This system worked as long as this delicate balance between these three commodities could remain stable. However, it wasn't long before it became clear that gold production would simply not keep pace with the production of goods in other industries. The US was therefore forced to continue...
Now, remember, this is specifically only applicable to capital. If not for capital, this doesn't exist. This entire issue, this entire system does not exist.
Debase its currency from the gold standard, which translated into devaluing the currency in relation to the price of gold. This sent the US ruling class into a crisis. Without the US dollar backed by gold, it was hardly any better than any other national currency used in world trade. As the Bretton Woods system collapsed, the US found a new commodity to pin its dollar to: petroleum. In 1973, Saudi Arabia signed an agreement to sell its petroleum on the world market in US dollars.
If you haven't seen my video on how Saudi Arabia bought Trump and Elon, go check that out.
This meant that anyone purchasing oil from Saudi Arabia would need to borrow US petrodollars before making the transaction. Saudi Arabia was granted virtual immunity from US criticism and a secure seat at the table of global power. Meanwhile, the petrodollar allowed the US to maintain its global hegemony by keeping its currency pinned to a universally desirable commodity. The crisis also gave renewed opportunity for laissez-faire economists to present their economic theories as a guide towards renewed economic prosperity. The 1930s classical theory of the Austrian school re-emerged with a new face in the 1970s as neoclassical theory out of the Chicago school. There were many thinkers of the neoclassical school that influenced public perception and government policies.
Oh, here we go,
economy,
Friedman.
But the poster boy of neoclassical economics and neoliberalism was Milton Friedman.
The real fundamental principle is that people individually should be free to decide how much they're willing to pay for reducing the chances of their death. Now, people mostly aren't willing to pay very much.
Milton
They did.
Friedman was an economics professor at the University of Chicago.
You're not
who
wrong,
developed
Ghost
a
Pepper.
renewed vision of Austrian economic theory under the banner of freedom. He taught his students that capitalism equated to freedom at every level of society, economics, and politics.
Literally,
A group
like,
of his students, known as
death cult shit at that point.
the Chicago Boys, came from Latin America to study economics at the Chicago School.
Yes, this is the guy that ruined libertarianism. He is the reason that the word libertarian is right now. Do you know how many... Sorry. Do you know how many times I have to explain to a conservative what libertarian socialism is because they think it's an oxymoron? And they're just a moron? It's that guy's fault.
Boys came from Latin America to study economics at the Chicago School. After their studies, they returned home and were given the opportunity to materialize their neoclassical economic theories with the overthrow and murder of the socialist Chilean president Salvador Allende in 1973.
Ooh, look, overthrowing and murdering socialists as a part of neoliberalism. I wonder why we are in the position that we are now, where the working class is entirely screwed out of every possible thing that they could ever have, and all of that is funneled directly to the wealthy for them to consume, and then keep in a bank off the coast of the US in some other fucking country that sits there and does nothing, and does not engage with the economy in any way, shape, or form.
The far-right military dictatorship that replaced the socialist Allende staffed many of the Chicago Boys in key
Base Captain
positions of
Buggy.
policy development. They introduced sweeping reforms that dismantled many of the progressive programs and agencies introduced under Allende that were not dissimilar to those of FDR's New Deal.
Guys,
Along with
go,
the
don't forget to
assault
go
on
like
Chilean
the stream on
institutions
YouTube.
Was an outright attack on tens of thousands of socialists and communists who were tortured and murdered for resisting the rise of Pinochet's founding brand of neoliberalism.
Oh look, more socialists and communists being killed by neoliberals. Where did Pinochet get his ideas from again?
In the 1980s, the ruling class in the US and England decided that they liked what they saw in Chile and proceeded to introduce similar brands of neoliberalism in their own countries.
That's how
which
it all
came to
works now,
dominate
pre-breakfast
much of
banana.
Western Europe and Canada shortly after. It was, once again, a drastic shift in the social contract between the state and working class. Only this time, it was not based on a New Deal, but naked exploitation of the working class.
All right, now we get into Reagan. All right, I gotta pee real quick, and then we'll get into the guy who dismantled the working class. Next time I get up to go pee, I really need to remember to hit the add button, because I'm curious to see if I get anything out of it. I usually don't. Like the last time I ran an ad, I got nothing for it, but I am curious. What's up, FTFH? Alright, let's learn about Reagan.
Neoliberalism marked a definitive end to the era of Keynes's demand-side economic theories.
Oh, pre-breakfast banana, just on the topic that you're on, by the way. Have you looked at, like, the Panama Papers, for example? Again, this graph needs to be fucking everywhere!
And inaugurated a sharp return to laissez-faire capitalism. In general, it ushered in a decline in corporate taxes, privatization of public assets, deregulation of industry and finance, curtailment of labor power, reduction in social spending, and an overall rise of unfettered private property.
This is literally all of the things that the current administration is trying to do. Decline corporate taxes and, in fact, tax cuts, trillions of dollars worth for the wealthy, privatization of public assets, such as the Department of Education, such as the IRS that they're talking about. This is literally the exact same stuff that they want to do. Deregulation of industry and finance. All the regulations are gone. Thank you for subscribing, Toei. The curtailment of labor power. They're trying to kill unions entirely. Just kill them off the bat. Reduction in social spending. They are cutting every type of social spending, every safety net, every social program out the window. Education, healthcare, pensions, gone. Unfettered private property. They want monopolies. They want monopoly towns. They want company towns where you have monopoly money that you can't spend outside of that town, where you live as a slave to the company because you have to do your grocery shopping at the company town. You have to pay your rent with the company money. You have to buy a car in the company town. Like, everything has to work around the private property owned by these individuals. That's what they want. Remember, Donald Trump keeps saying, let's go back to the golden age. What he's referring to is the Gilded Age.
The neoliberal worldview views capitalism as a market system guided by voluntary exchanges between buyers and sellers. Market equilibrium between supply and demand is achieved when this process is allowed to occur unimpeded.
This is not how it works.
State intervention, whether in the form of taxes, public ownership, industrial regulation...
This only works if you want to, like, funnel all of the money up to the rich.
...or social reforms is seen as antagonistic to market forces and therefore ought to be minimized.
Government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
Yeah, there we go.
It is time to reawaken this industrial giant, to get government back within its means, and to lighten our punitive tax burden. And these will be our first priorities, and on these principles there will be no compromise.
In
you
Chile,
should, SN.
The neoliberal experiment was initiated with the privatization of the state-managed pension program. The pension system was intended to secure a fund for old age retirement for working-class Chileans. It was one of the many progressive reforms introduced under Allende.
Like Social
but the
Security.
Chicago boys turned the pensions into a massive Wall Street gambling fund and handed it over to financial speculators. In the US,
nothing bad's ever happened from Wall Street doing speculative investment trading and gambling with other people's money. I don't know, in like 2008, 2000, nothing happened.
Demonstrated neoliberalism's departure from the New Deal era more clearly than the Reagan administration's handling of the air traffic control worker strike in 1981.
Of course not biking cat, because they're all brainwashed.
Like FDR, who lent legal and moral support to the struggle of trade unions against capital, Reagan's approach to striking workers was much more favorable to
Space
employers.
Cosmopolitics. I hope you have a good one.
In 1981, when the Professional Air Traffic Control Operators Union decided to launch a strike, 13,000 workers walked off the job to demand a shorter work week, more pay, and greater negotiating power for the union. The Reagan administration fired almost all the striking workers and had them immediately replaced by military air traffic controllers.
Oh look, they hate you! This is the system that they're currently implementing. Remember, just a month ago, we had a big strike for Amazon in New York City, right? You know what New York Police Department did during that strike? Gimme. Oh. This is what the NYPD was doing while Amazon was having a strike. They locked arms to stop the striking workers from being able to prevent the vehicles from leaving. By the way, I still find it very funny that they're not holding hands because, I don't know, I guess it's gay or something. Pussies. But the police exist to police you for the capital class at this point. I mean, generally.
Can't be on the sidewalk, can't be in the street. It's alternative.
This is literally killing the entire point of the protest, by the way.
Yeah, look at that.
This is illegal is correct. Also, Amazon gets to do this shit. They get to flood the area where people are protesting when it's like freezing weather.
Well, they just opened the sprinkler release, and we were just like, oh, here, because as you see, we're sitting down.
We need to bring back strong unions again. Toby, the way that strong unions came about is by fighting in the streets and getting killed by the police, so do with that what you will.
The neoclassical economist Alan Greenspan, reflecting on the legacy of Ronald Reagan, noted that perhaps the
AI is literally devil tech.
most important and then highly controversial
I'm trying,
domestic
Captain Buggy.
initiative was the firing of air
Not quite an anarchist, but I'm close enough. Oh, look, by the way, the firing of air traffic controllers is quite funny because it kind of matches up with Trump in a very succinct way.
traffic controllers in August 1981.
Like DEI was keeping the planes in the
president
air.
invoked the law that striking government employees forfeit their jobs, an action that unsettled those who cynically believed no president would ever uphold that law. President Reagan prevailed, but far more importantly, his action gave weight to the legal right of private employers.
Yes, AI is devil tech.
Previously not fully
I mean, I don't believe in the devil, but I fucking hate AI.
to use their own discretion to both hire and discharge workers.
As in, you have no job security. If the government wants to fuck you, you have to deal with it. If the corporations want to fuck you, you have to deal with it. That's what this says here.
This state-sponsored strike breaking was a major signal to capitalists in other industries. It sent the message that they no longer had to be tolerant when their workers formed into a rabble. They could simply be terminated and replaced by scabs. Neoliberalism developed within the context of two major changes at the global level. The first was globalization. Until the 1980s, globalization referred to the export of commodities or capital in the form of foreign investment.
Fuck scabs and fuck AI. Pre-breakfast banana, there's no such thing as a good AI in our current mode of production. Under a socialist mode of production that doesn't exist for profit, I can maybe see it, but also machines make people lazy. And so machines that think for you are the last thing that you want. I want machines that will, you know what? Really quickly. This is what I want AI to be doing. But this could only possibly exist under a socialist mode of production.
AI now, they're like, how did fucking computers become the thing and machines became the thing that does art and humans are the ones in fucking Amazon warehouses? Yeah. Like, shouldn't the robots be working so we could paint? Why the fuck do you type like Superman with tits and blonde hair into a computer and the computer does it and then it's like, but some guy's putting a 16-hour shift for no fucking money. Why aren't the robots the fucking slaves? How are humans the fucking slaves?
Yeah.
We should have lives of leisure with the AI. It should be the coolest thing of all time.
AI in medicine, I can understand, like, that does do some good shit there, but, like, the concept of AI overall right now is anti-human. It is literally anti-human. It's bad for all of humanity. And this context is fine, but that cannot exist in the profit mode of production.
But with the invention of the jet engine and global telecommunications technologies, it became possible to export entire means of production abroad. The underdeveloped world started becoming the epicenter of manufacturing,
Captain Buggy, they
as
will.
Western capital began setting up shop in countries like China.
Western capital setting up shop in countries like China. See, they're not so different from us after all.
US, well-paying jobs in manufacturing, such as the auto sector, started becoming squeezed out by foreign competitors, such as those in Japan, and needed to reduce labor costs by moving production abroad. This led to widespread deindustrialization.
This is the first Red Pen video I'm ever watching, Proud PPG.
In the West, but widespread industrialization in places like China.
SN. We can't have a government framework for AI because all of our officials are too fucking old to understand how it works. Just on stream yesterday, we watched a guy have a stroke for 1.5 minutes in the house.
But widespread industrialization in places like China. The second major global transformation was the collapse of the Soviet Union.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
After the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989 and the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, neoliberalism implemented the shock doctrine that it used in
so basically like Hassan. Ooh, the shock doctrine.
Chile to privatize Soviet state assets. Infrastructure and
definitely
other
read
public
Naomi
assets
Klein.
Took decades of labor, funding, war.
What do you mean governance framework for AI? I mean a way of regulating AI, Biking Cat. That's what I mean. regulations for AI companies need to exist in our current framework if we're not going to get rid of it, which we're not. But the government is not in a position to make a framework of regulation for AI because none of them understand AI. Governance is typically done within an industry, IP address. Oh, like, not even just like, then that's just regulation then.
Wars
That's what I would
and
say.
working class sacrifice to build were all robbed by capitalist vultures who swooped in to gobble them up at discount prices. In the early 90s, it appeared as though neoliberal capitalism had triumphed. Soviet communism was gone, and China was opening up to the world market, slowly integrating itself into the global capitalist system.
Viking Cat has been agreeing with a lot of stuff. I mean, climate change was interesting, but we'll see. Okay, here we get to China, right? So, China was never socialist, nor was it communist. It was always part of the economic system. We're literally watching it happen in slow motion. They were already introduced to our capital during Reagan's era.
To gobble them up at discount prices. In the early 90s, it appeared as though neoliberal capitalism had triumphed. Soviet communism was gone, and China was opening up to the world market, slowly integrating itself into the global capitalist system. Many within the bourgeois class were celebrating and touting the triumph of capitalism
Ugh,
and
fucking
ushering
Bill Clinton.
in the end of history.
Okay, now we're getting to Fukuyama, I guess? At this point in time, we get to the point where the capitalists need to make up bullshit to justify capitalism. That's where we are now, by the way. This is part 6 and onward. It's just, how do we justify capitalism to the working class?
The fall of Soviet communism and the consolidation of China into the...
How are those bills written matter, Biking Cat? There are loopholes that people will use inside of those rulings. Like, the system of regulating AI can't be, like, even if you put regulations on it, you're not thinking wide enough to cover all of it. The antagonism of capitalism didn't go far back enough yet back then. Now it's becoming obvious, like, yeah, but like still, I'm not sure that there's enough people that are realizing that capitalism is what's screwing them over. We are in the final form of capitalism, the most corrupt, distinct form of capitalism. Even the fascism of the right has been corrupted by capitalism. The fascism of the right is liberal fascism. They have DEI amongst themselves. Why? Because of capitalism. The capitalist class has infected the fascists, which has made them less fascist, but more capitalist. Capitalism is the ruling economic and political standard now. In current events, we talk about grandma's Social Security and give a $400 million contract to the one who took it away. Yeah, well, I mean, to be fair, that's just one. Look at his SpaceX contracts. He got $20 billion for that one. He's a defense contractor.
The global capitalist system represented the overcoming of major barriers to capitalist expansion. Soviet communism was no longer a viable alternative, and Chinese communism would surely endure the same fate within the global capitalist system of trade and
Whereas
finance.
neither of these were communism,
but this triumph only resolved the crisis for the bourgeois class. Cheap labor in China and the opening of markets across the former Soviet states did nothing to improve the lives of working class people at home.
It's because it was never meant to.
The working class was generally apathetic towards capitalism. This remained true throughout the 1990s as well as the early 2000s, but after the 2008 economic collapse, many people woke up to the violence of the capitalist system as their homes, their jobs, or their life savings were ripped away from them at the drop of a dime.
Now, understand here, right, that people woke up for a moment. Americans have this negative, like, we have this bad habit, but it's also not our fault. It's part of the system that's been produced to manufacture this exact habit of we just move on with the news cycle. And if it's affecting us personally, which a lot of people were, they'll be mad about it until it's no longer affecting them. And then the next thing comes and you forget. We just move on. Everything is built so you move on to the next thing and never stay on one thing too long. It's also a more extreme version of this is what is being instituted, what is being used by the party right now, by the right. And that's flooding the zone with news. It's executive order after executive order. Bam, 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 bam. There's so many that you now have to consume and analyze all of this. The courts have to, do one at a... Like, they're so far behind. It is the idea of flooding the zone so much that you miss shit, that you can't fight back. It's blitzkrieg, but mentally. psychologically. It's literally psychological warfare.
In the wake of the 2008 crisis, 10 million Americans lost their jobs, 3 million Americans lost their homes, and millions of people lost their life savings as $450 billion was wiped out from pension funds.
$450 billion disappeared from American This is 2008, by the way. 3 million Americans lost their homes and 10 million lost their jobs. We have 800,000 homeless people in the United States, which, by the way, you could just give them a free house and it will make the government money. Maybe we should focus on the Gulf of Mexico. Careful, the woke will get you for not calling it the right pronouns.
Meanwhile, the banks, whose risky but very lucrative financial speculation fueled the crisis, were bailed out with taxpayer money to the tune of roughly $750 billion, while the executives of these financial industries walked away from the crisis while paying themselves record bonuses, up to $90 million. Once again, the distinction between the New Deal and the neoliberal approach to economic crises came to the forefront. In 1933, the Great Depression was resolved with a massive redistribution of wealth to
We can talk about AI next stream, guys. I do have some stuff on that.
American working class. But the Great Recession of 2008 was resolved with a massive redistribution of wealth to the financial system.
Which, by the way, is the plan again. They want another recession to do this. They don't want a depression. They don't want to crash the economy, but they want another recession to do exactly this again. By the way, a very sad and fucked up statistic increased a lot during 2009 due to the subprime mortgage crisis. Meanwhile, these motherfuckers got to bail out with no consequences. Yeah. I'm assuming you mean like statistics? Yeah.
The hundreds of billions of dollars in bailouts and the trillions of dollars of monetary stimulus, nearly all of it went almost directly into the hands of the capitalist
Toby,
class.
they might fuck it up and make it a depression.
In the 1930s, the Great Depression led many workers into socialist and communist parties who sought to follow the lead of the Soviet Union in waging a revolutionary struggle against capital. But in 2008, no such alternative existed. The capitalist class did not need.
But Proud PBG, if you weren't here when we were doing the FDR bit, FDR was excellent for the country, but he still was only working in service of capitalism. His entire presidency is what made capitalism in America be able to continue to exist. Because prior to FDR, we were having a lot of anarchists and socialists, and you know what I mean, yeah.
Need to make any concessions to the workforce. Nor did it even need to deter foreign nations away from a communist alternative. When it came to economic downturns and crises, everyone would simply have to bite the bullet as capital was bailed out. The period leading up to the current crisis, featuring price inflation, wage stagnation,
they steal all their data,
rampant
Biking
economic
Cat,
inequality, and ecological destruction, there have been tentative proposals for a renewal of Keynesian economic policies.
I remember that, Captain Buggy.
Some have argued for a Green New Deal, which would introduce large infrastructure projects in the energy sector to place the US as a global leader in so-called sustainable development.
Which, by the way, is based, but...
Others argue that the nature of the global economic system requires a type of global neo-Keynesianism.
If you want to know about the business plot, I did a video on it a couple days ago. I'll link you the stream.
Introduce an international redistribution of wealth. While it may be fair to draw certain parallels between the crisis of the 1920s and the crisis of the 2020s, history teaches us that it is necessary to move beyond the capitalist system in order to seriously confront the global challenges that lay ahead. As the New Deal was being unrolled in the 1930s, socialists and communists warned US workers that if capitalists had the power to give workers these reforms,
I get that.
they also had the power to take them away.
Don't worry, Proud PBG, I can pick it up when someone's about to go pro-China.
Keynesianism with a global humanitarian face, or greenwashed Keynesianism, is still an economic system in the hands of the bourgeois class.
This is true.
We should also keep in mind that the so-called golden age of capitalism, while beneficial to many workers, was also the basis of redlining black communities, growing the military-industrial complex, colonizing the third world, enforcing strict gender roles in the family, and continuing...
Remember the bit about Eisenhower saying the thing that we need to avoid is the military-industrial complex being formed and being tied into capital?
Perpetual robbery.
We've just failed on every level.
It should also be noted that each of these crises was resolved at the global level through monetary reforms that maintained US unipolar hegemony. After the fall of Soviet communism, the US ruling class believed that global capitalism had truly presented the world with no alternative, and for several decades this certainly seemed to be true. In 1990, China's GDP sat at around 360 billion. Poverty was still widespread, industry was underdeveloped, and the country's voice held little sway in geopolitics.
China is still a capitalist country. They have their own bourgeois. Like, keep that in mind as we watch this bit.
By 2000, Chinese GDP had tripled to 1.2 billion. Fueled by over 1 billion people seeking to avoid another century of humiliation, China easily became the fastest growing economy in the world.
This music is
with
almost
an
certainly
average annual
copyright.
growth rate of approximately 9%. By the onset of
That's almost certainly copyright.
China's GDP was at $4.5 trillion, and it was no longer stuck in a position where it was forced to endure the global economic chaos.
Remember, before this point, they had like, what, 50 million Chinese people starved to death? I'm going to China. I'm a good future student visa tourist. I mean, have fun. They would not like me there. Although I will say, like, you're probably better off there than you are in America at this point.
Caused by unfettered
Not much, but
capitalism and the US
better.
petrodollar. The crisis was a wake-up call for China, and it decided to start asserting itself on the world stage. By 2021, China's GDP stood at $17.7 trillion, and it has...
And remember, yes, their GDP went up. Yes, they look successful from the outside, but the people in China, like, the Chinese workers don't work much less than we do. It's not like if you went on like Red Note and you saw bullshit about like every Chinese person owns their home and they all work like less than 40 hours a week, that's horseshit. None of that is true. China has the same issues that we do. It's just on a slightly lesser scale. They haven't caught up yet to the total corruption of capitalism to its final form. They're still in like 90s era capitalism.
Quickly emerged as one of the most important economic powers in the contemporary political milieu.
Well, the world's 10 wealthiest men doubled their fortunes during the first 2 years of the pandemic as poverty and inequality soared. That is the claim of the British aid charity Oxfam. It is
now, also, don't forget about Argentina. Argentina is like is the final destination. It is anarcho-capitalism. It is everything is gone for you, and the capitalists have everything else. That is the end of the line. That's where we're headed. In fact, Milei in Argentina went to America, asked the Heritage Foundation for help, was given a copy of the Mandate for Leadership, Project 2025, went home, did it. What happened? Their inflation started to go down, their poverty rate went up to 50%. That's what you can expect. Late stage capitalism.
Tax the gains made by billionaires whose wealth increased by an
This is end stage capitalism.
Rate of $1.3 billion a day.
In wake of the COVID-19 crisis and the war in Ukraine, China has been on the forefront of producing the initiatives and infrastructure that are necessary for a more equitable and sustainable global development, as seen in the Belt and Road Initiative. But more importantly, as US imperialism threatens to plunge Europe into World War III, China has proven to be a global leader in peace.
No, they're not. They're not peaceful. They're doing a genocide. They've annexed Hong Kong. They want to annex Taiwan. They're not peaceful, but they are better than us. You guys get the point here, right? He's talking about outloaning developing and conflicted countries that can't be that CCP built. Yeah.
In March 2023, China brokered a peace deal between Iran and Saudi Arabia and has demonstrated global leadership in brokering a peace deal between Ukraine and Russia.
Okay, no, this is too much China glazing now. Now this has gotten to the point where it's indistinguishable from right-wing like talking points about like Russia or something. Look, this is what they want to be the end goal for you. This is what they envision for the future. Thank you, The Onion.
And in financial news, tech darling GigSlave made its market debut on the New York Stock Exchange today with an eye-popping valuation of over $84 billion. Wow. Since launching in 2017, the Peter Thiel-backed slave-hailing app has quickly become a disruptor in the slave industry, today boasting a user base of over 200 million loyal slave sharers worldwide. ONN's Bob Passetti joining us now from the New York Stock Exchange for more reaction. Bob, this is quite a day for the slaveholders.
That's right. GigSlave opened trading today under the symbol GSLV at $58 a share, which has already made it this year's largest IPO.
An even higher valuation than what was initially expected. Bob,
This
what
is
makes GigSlave so beloved?
Well, users...
This really kind of is a mask-off example of what the right probably thinks in their head.
Of course, love the convenience.
Remember, this is
Being
The
able
Onion.
To open your phone, see slaves in your area, and claim human property with the click of a button. I mean, it's remarkable. I'm not even really a tech guy, and I use it all the time.
It is convenient.
But what investors love are the margins. This is a high-volume business with basically no overhead.
Demon.
Very profit-friendly, and unlike its competitors, GigSlave was early to the human trafficking sphere, so still plenty of room to grow for investors.
One of those shareholders, of course, being GigSlave CEO and co-founder Nathan Sullivan, who celebrated today's achievement in a statement, quote, "We have come a long way since the early days of this company when I was shackling up our first slave in my garage, but what hasn't changed and will never change is GigSlave's core mission."
The Onion becoming like the only mainstream media source that is remotely accurate.
Of convenience and dehumanization.
His
I
fucking
spoke
face,
with
yeah.
Nate earlier, and he understands that GigSlave is really seen as a bellwether for the slave labor sector. The only
Segregate, child labor, instapours, exploit.
only question now is, will today's success drive other VC competitors like Apartheid Gram and Poverty Hub to go public themselves? We'll have to wait and
Apartheid Gram?
see, but it certainly seems likely.
Not a bad time to call your broker.
No, it's not.
Thank you, Bob. Coming up.
God, I love The Onion. They really are becoming like actual mainstream media. Segregate. I know. Fuck. Apartheid Gram really got me. Here's the link for you all in case you want it. So, like, when you view what's happening, what we're doing domestically, what we're talking about doing internationally, you have to view it through the lens of this all fits in to the capitalist mode of production. They just want your money. It's always been about money. Corporations exist specifically to increase money, profits for them. That's the whole point of capital. So, first of all, we have a, military industrial complex that is not only well ballooned beyond any kind of accountability, because Congress doesn't know how much money the Pentagon gets, but we also have defense contractors who are directly tied in to this, which, by the way, it's not just Elon. I'm almost positive that all of the other oligarchs have ties to the defense industry. We have defense contractors owning most of the wealth. Remember, 3 people own more wealth in the bottom half of the United States right now. 3 people own more wealth than 150 million in America, at least. The number probably goes up and up and up every day. But on top of this, these people are the ones in charge. They are tearing apart the government. They're ripping apart any regulations on them. They're killing your labor unions. They are bringing us back to the point of pre-FDR. What are you going to do about it? We need more pamphlets, newspapers, global socialist movement with ideological window shoppers. True. We also need to start really creating a list of what these people are, who they are, what they're doing. We need records so that, I don't know, maybe if we end up winning at some point, we overthrow these people, we have records of things that they've said and done so that they could be, I don't know, put in front of the Hague for their war crimes. Do you know how many people are probably already dead right now because of Elon and Trump? You have to cap independent wealth under 1 billion. To be fair, I think if you have $1 billion, you should be fired out of a cannon into the sun. So, no, they're not, Captain Buggy, but it is what it is. I don't think anyone should ever have $1 billion. There's no reason, unless everyone else does too. We need to understand that capitalism will always work against our best interests. None of you will ever be a billionaire. Almost certainly none of you will ever be a millionaire. And neither will I. I don't see that as a likely possibility, and you shouldn't either. But a lot of Americans consider themselves temporarily embarrassed millionaires, and that also leads to this ideology of, well, it's fine, like, I'll get there soon. Meanwhile, every possible opportunity they have to get there is being cut in front of them over and over and over again. They are stealing from you. They are making your life worse, and that is why they exist. That's the whole point. Got a couple more videos, but like, I'm not sure how good they are. Why did the middle class support fascism? Not really, not that one. So what to do? Organize, go outside, talk to your neighbors, and talk about this. Show them reality. And if they want to engage, then engage with them. You need to build this system from the bottom up. Again, we got the 5-day work week, the 9 to 5, you got overtime pay. All of these things came about from people like us protesting in the street, getting beat the shit out of, being killed. That's what we need to do. That's what they've brought us back to. Now, you should not be doing violence. I don't advocate for violence. I'm not even allowed to advocate for violence. But violence will be done to you by the state. You can almost certainly guarantee that. I mean, Donald Trump has said he would shoot protesters with live ammunition. So, direct action is this. Seeking mutual aid is this. If you're afraid of talking to your neighbors, or you might feel uncomfortable in your community, go buy some cookies or some pastries and then knock on people's doors. People will be much less taken aback if they answer the door and you have some cookies in your hand. You say, hey, listen, like, we've all spent so much time online and none of us are really engaging with the community. I haven't talked to any, like, you guys are my neighbors. I don't even know your name. First of all, like, I brought some cookies because I'm going to go knock on some houses. I'm hoping to start a whatever it is, club. I want to start a community garden. I'm fundraising to buy this empty lot of property to build something in. That's what you do. Find allies, be an ally, let people know you're safe, and offer safety. SN, you're exactly right, and so are you, Captain Buggy. By the way, I'm really grateful for, like, you guys, because the way that you engage in chat is not only helpful to each other, but is also, like, in good faith. It's kind, it's empathetic. This is the kind of environment that I want you to foster in real life. Because online social interaction, as I constantly say, can only ever create a facsimile of the positive effects of in-person social interaction. You need to do this in person, or you're not going to have those effects. You can't do this online. It just won't work. It's not enough. What is happening? Except when you call your representatives, which you should be doing, by the way. You should be annoying the shit out of your representatives every day, constantly. You should keep sending them that graph of the wage to productivity line. That happened to me IRL. The PSL gave me vegan pizza and I didn't know I like vegan stuff until then. Based. Give me food and I'm changing ideologies. It works. That's what I'm telling you. If you show up at someone's house with food, they will be much, much, much less defensive to your, like, whatever the fuck you want to talk about. They'll be much more open to engaging with you, to listening to you, to thinking of you not as the enemy outside the walls of my castle, as every American considers their house their fucking castle. You are the enemy outside the wall, but now you're showing up with a white flag and a feast for those who dwell inside the castle. And so they open the castle doors and you get to go in. And you don't have to siege the castle. It's just, it's a matter of actually just going outside. But, I think Bill Burr is becoming the new George Carlin.
People that are struggling out there because of these f***ing billionaires. And they got us all arguing liberal and conservative. We got to stop doing that. Like, I am so
up versus
tired
down
of hearing about people going to bed worried about what's going to happen next week. There is so much fucking money in this country.
We have enough money in the United States, if we include the money that billionaires hold both in the United States and in offshore bank accounts, that every single American, for at least 2 generations, could live a middle-class, comfortable lifestyle without doing shit. Just sitting home and, I don't know, watching TV and having a wank. Like, that's it. That's all that they do, and then we'd still have 2 generations of that. That's how much wealth we have. At the very least, might I add.
And there's so much work being done, you know. And if you work a full fucking week at a job, you should be able to pay your fucking rent. You shouldn't have to go out and get a fucking job and still be struggling.
True.
It's bad for the country. Because then the kids don't see their parents and they're not getting the upbringing that they need. It's so fucking, these fucking billionaires. They need to be...
We already have undocumented immigrants doing those jobs, Bike and Cat, but at the same time, like, you understand what I mean here, right?
Put down. You know, like fucking rabid dogs. They're like rabid with fucking greed and just going out and just dividing everybody.
Exactly what they're doing. And remember, right now, this is what the president is doing. Impeach the corrupt judges. If any judge anywhere can stop every presidential action, then we do not live in a democracy. Like, these people are evil. They hate you. And remember, they're fucking in charge. Modi, the president of India. Why is this not Donald Trump? Why is it Elon Musk? Why did Elon Musk get to do 50 minutes of uninterrupted press conference in the Oval Office while Trump just sat there with his mouth shut? They own the country, so now it's your job to try and fight back however you can. Building community is your best first step. Stop being divided. Individualism is what's killing us. You need to build community, even with people you don't like. Because the people you don't like because they don't know anything. The more they see, like, you don't have to engage with them immediately. Build your community, and then invite them over. They will see how well it's working, and then they'll want to join. The conservative argument against the work week is you work a low-wage job, kids do McDonald's. You do realize that, like, the minimum wage was never intended to be kids' jobs. The minimum wage, when it was put in place to be, this is the minimum amount of money that a person needs to live comfortably. That's what the minimum wage originally was. Not the bare minimum to survive, but it was the bare minimum for a comfortable lifestyle. I think it's better explained as we have the machines to do the work for us and the productivity of only 12 hours a week and still have a good lifestyle. Essentially, yes. If the rest of us don't listen to a judge, we go to jail? Yes. The law only applies to you if you have under $1 billion. Perhaps we did accelerationism by not electing Biden Kamala again. Maybe we'll go full Maoist militant. I mean, to be fair, it's not shitposting, but who knows? No, I agree with you, Bike and Cat. That's what the machine should be doing. The machine shouldn't be taking, like, human jobs that exist for the betterment of humanity. They shouldn't be taking away income sources from people. But if we also had UBI, then the machines can do all the shitty work. That's why socialism with universal basic income means that you don't have to do all that shitty work. The AI and the machines can exist. They can just exist not for profit, but to increase the ability for the working class to have higher standards. Did you see the boy tell Trump, shush your mouth, be quiet? He actually said, shut your fucking mouth. And he also said, you're not the president, you need to leave. So those were very funny. Here, let me pull up the clip for that one.
You know, I wasn't even going to post on this, and then I saw some clips that changed my mind, and I'll show you those in a moment. But first, Elon Musk yesterday, along with his son, Little X, held a press conference in the Oval Office to discuss what Doge is doing. all while
They won't, pre-breakfast banana. Elon and Trump are not working against each other.
Trump watched on silently from his cuck chair. And in the aftermath, one of Elon's fanboys shared this tweet that Elon reposted. It says, "History repeats itself," and it shows two images. The first image is a pretty iconic image of
Oh,
JFK
absolutely,
Jr.
Bike and Cat. Kids hear what they hear and then they say it.
underneath his dad's desk while he worked in the Oval Office.
I have another
The second
example of that.
is little X seemingly bored out of his mind, crawling around on the floor while Donald Trump pontificates about what he liked watching from said cuck chair. But I can point out at least one glaring difference between these two situations. JFK Jr., as I recall, never had criticisms of his father while the press was there. Little X, on the other hand, has a
It
lot
would have been
to say.
amazing, Oxpecker.
And there was a hot mic that caught some of it. So first is this little gem.
To restore
This is like it's literally child abuse.
democracy. To restore democracy. This may seem like bull.
You heard that too, right? You're not the president, you need to go away. I'll play the clip a second time.
I think so.
You watch and tell me if that's what he said.
To restore democracy. This may seem
It is
That's what
objectively
he said, but I'll go
child
one
abuse.
better, because he also said this.
The prices from one year to the next are the same, and they're
SN, you know what showed how much like this child is abused to me is we watched most of that press conference and the kid was never looking at Elon. Ever. Not once. Have you ever seen a child that young be around strangers with his parents or with their parents and not look up at their parents for like comfort, for they don't, he doesn't recognize Elon as his father.
and their mortgage all
That one's clear as day. He says, "I want you to shut your fucking mouth up." And there's already people who are like, "Out of the mouth of babes." But let me just put this out there.
It's because A, he uses the child as a child, like as a human shield, A, from like danger, because he often carries him on his shoulders, but B, from public attention, because people were watching this and they were looking at little X instead of listening to, or instead of paying attention to the fact that this is an unelected billionaire giving a 50-minute uninterrupted speech in the Oval Office to reporters. He's giving a press conference to reporters. This is unprecedented. It's never happened before.
Consideration.
Like I can't underline and make I can't say how important this is enough times. This is unprecedented shit and it's fucking scary.
Young doesn't have this profound moment where he like tells off Trump. He just repeats things he's heard. So if he says you're not really the president, chances are someone has said that around him and he's repeating it. When he says I want
I mean, like the kid obviously repeats shit.
President Trump?
Yeah.
Well, you have. Yeah.
We're in SpaceX and quietly just do whatever we want.
What's your assessment? Did this work? Is he going to win?
Yeah, it is. Not for now. No.
They'll never know.
I think it's done.
You think it's done?
Yeah.
But never know.
They'll never know.
Look at the data as it comes in from every county in Pennsylvania.
This was about the election. They'll never know.
Oh, he can tell us.
This is the stuff MAGA's not picking up on. I have to check and see how this was received. I'm betting it will be heralded as a real family man in action. Genuinely, yes. That's how it would be seen. MAGA would perceive this as, oh, well, look at him and how good of a father he is to his son. Meanwhile, this kid's just admitting that Elon rigged the election. Not that it matters, because the election was rigged through the media already. Like, this was rigged on every level, and Elon fucking with the machines at the end is like the tiniest little... It's not even important. I don't even like to focus on it, because every system that this was built on is already rigging the system in favor of the capital class. This isn't about left versus right. I don't give a shit about Democrats or Republicans. Fuck the Democrats, as we covered today. Fuck the Republicans, as I've been covering for a year now. The point is up versus down. It's the working class versus the capital class. That's the real fight. If elections mattered, they'd make them illegal. It's very funny. Emma Goldman. All right, let's see. Oh, let's read Cosmopolitics, because she just started and she was in here for a while. That'd be pretty cool. Thank you all for tuning in, by the way. This was a energetic stream. Don't forget to drop a like on the YouTube video. That really helps. And join the Discord. Follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky. And I'll see you all next time.